On another ordinary day in the bustling city of Seoul, a man was watching the news in his luxurious apartment. The report highlighted the conclusion of the shareholders' meeting of the Samjeon Group, one of the three largest business conglomerates in the country. After 13 hours of intense deliberations, it was announced that the new president would be Jeon Seong-guk. He celebrated enthusiastically. He felt that he had finally reached the top. For years, he had dedicated himself tirelessly. He studied non-stop, worked out, studied abroad, kept his siblings in check within the company, dealt with scandals involving his own uncle, maintained his arranged marriage, and built a flawless public image, reinforced by constant praise on social media. All of this made his rise seem natural. Jeon Seong-guk believed this was a new beginning and that, under his leadership, all the filth of the past would be cleaned up. The initial plan was clear: remove all subordinates loyal to the former president. But as he enjoyed an expensive wine amid the celebration, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He remembered that his grandfather, the founder of the Samjeon Group, had died of a heart attack. Still, he refused to believe that something so trivial could defeat him. In his mind, someone like him would never fall to a mere physical failure. The next moment, everything went dark, and then he found himself in the body of a baby. A woman asked affectionately who the little Gugu was. Confused, he wondered what was happening. Shortly after, he was dressed in baby clothes, clean and adorable. His new name was also Seong-guk. The 21-year-old woman named Kim So-young, now his mother, smiled and told her husband that the baby was the most beautiful in the world. The father, Jeon Ji-seong, 23 years old, agreed and said he was even more handsome than celebrity babies. Seong-guk, however, saw no humor in the situation. He thought about how he had gone from a man who was 1.83 meters tall, 75 kilograms, and able to bench press 100 kilograms, to a chubby little creature with a disproportionately large head. Before, he was the powerful president of the Samjeon Group, with an impeccable resume and perfect public image. Now he lived in a modest house, wore cheap clothes, and was surrounded by young poor parents who had come from orphanages and had almost nothing. He felt defeated when he realized that the wine from his celebration had become low-quality powdered milk. Even so, like any baby, he couldn't resist feeding. When his father gave him a loving kiss, he was taken aback. He wasn't used to so much affection. In his previous life, Jeon Seong-guk never had a loving family. His real parents didn't care about him, and as the eldest brother, he was forced to take care of his younger siblings, true demons in human form. Now, in this new reality, he was feeling something he had never experienced before: the warmth of parents who loved him. Still, he thought it was all absurd. He had died on the very day he became president of the largest conglomerate in the country and was reborn as a baby in a poor family. The hardest part of all this was getting used to the two adults who now called him their son. They were far too loving, and for someone like him, that was strange. As the parents said it was nap time, he questioned how he could possibly sleep amidst so much confusion. In the next moment, he was already fast asleep. He figured that, for now, it was best to rest and deal with the situation later. While the baby slept, the father suggested the mother rest as well, but So-young said he needed to go to work. Ji-seong insisted she relax and then turned on the television. The news reported a scandal involving the former president of the Samjeon Group, Jeon Jushin. The prosecution had launched an investigation for bribery, and the former president appeared personally to testify that same afternoon. Upon hearing the news, Seong-guk suddenly woke up. The mother commented to the father about the case, and the baby, upon looking at the TV, recognized the man on the screen. He immediately thought that was his late grandfather. Seong-guk was surprised to see his grandfather on television. For a moment, he wondered if he had been alive all this time. With his heart racing, he got up and pressed his face against the screen, trying to better understand what he was seeing. He remembered that moment perfectly. When he was only 10 years old, his grandfather had been accused of bribing politicians and had to be taken to court. At the time, the family's enemies took advantage of the situation to attack the Samjeon Group, calling it a corrupt corporation that thrived on bribes. In Seong-guk's mind, money had always been synonymous with power, and connections were superpowers. Believing someone could get rich just by saving little by little was, to him, a naive thought held by those born and raised in poverty. As he reflected on all of this, his parents were thrilled to see him crawling and even trying to stand. They proudly celebrated, unaware of the whirlwind of thoughts the baby carried. He also clearly remembered how, on that day in front of the prosecution, he was the one who pushed his grandfather's wheelchair. The choice was strategic, meant to move the public and generate empathy. For him, it was the perfect debut. At that moment, he showed the whole world he was the rightful heir of the empire. But now, in this new timeline, the one pushing the wheelchair was Taeguk, his brother from his previous life, a greedy and foolish boy who, despite studying abroad, ended up drowning in drugs and crime. Seong-guk knew that Taeguk had spent his life trying to usurp his position. And now, in addition to having gone back in time, he had also also lost everything: his destiny, his reputation, his power. Everything had been taken from him. Later, already upset in front of the television, Seong-guk even refused to eat. He only wanted to keep watching, absorbing as much information as possible about his grandfather, the Samjeon group, and any clue on how he could return to his original body. By this point, Kim So-young was very worried. Her son seemed obsessed with the TV. When Jeon Ji-seong came home from work, he happily announced that he had brought leftover meat from the restaurant where he worked as a chef. So-young told her husband that the baby spent hours in front of the TV. When she tried to change the channel or turn it off, he would start crying. Ji-seong tried to distract him by standing in front of the screen and saying that daddy was home and wanted to play, but the little one gave an angry expression and simply ignored him. The father, surprised, commented that he seemed to have been defeated by a child. Meanwhile, Seong-guk thought there was no time for games. He needed to gather as much useful information as possible, understand the current scenario, and plan how to reclaim what was rightfully his. However, So-young turned off the TV, saying he needed to eat and rest. In response, he started crying, feeling powerless. In his mind, he questioned whether she had any idea how much he had fought to secure that successor position. He would not accept losing everything to Taeguk like this without a fight. Even with all the crying, So-young tried to calm him down, gently saying he needed to be a good boy, that he would rest now and could watch TV the next day. And in that moment, Seong-guk noticed something strange. Maybe it was because he was in a baby's body, but he felt like he was slowing down. His emotions were more intense, his thoughts shorter and more confused. Moreover, when So-young gently patted his back, he would fall asleep against his will. Ji-seong commented that he had finally fallen asleep. He said the baby must have taken after his mother, but So-young expressed her concern. She mentioned that their son was already almost a year old and still hadn't said either mommy or daddy. All he did was watch the news. She felt insecure, afraid she was failing as a mother, because she truly didn't know how to raise a child. Ji-seong, trying to reassure her, said that even though they didn't have much, their love was genuine, and that was what mattered most. He assured her that their son would grow up well, that they just needed to believe in him. However, a few days later, Seong-guk was already feeling hopeless. He kept watching the news while pretending to be asleep, but nothing truly useful had come up. The world carried on as if nothing had happened. He, on the other hand, was still trapped in a baby's body. So-young, noticing the change, asked if he wasn't going to watch the news that day. But to him, at that moment, it didn't matter anymore. He didn't need it. Seong-guk thought he had given up. He had accepted it until So-young came up with an idea. It was time to go out for a walk with mommy. The day was beautiful, and they went to the park, enjoying the pleasant weather. While walking, they ran into the building's landlady. So-young politely asked if she was heading to work. The woman replied no, saying she would leave later than usual that day. So-young wished her a good day, smiling as always. As he watched the scene, Seong-guk was intrigued. He found it interesting how someone so young could own a building. That immediately caught his attention. But soon his mother began cheerfully commenting that beans were cheaper and that she'd make a special soup. He thought, a little impatiently, that she really talked too much. Suddenly, the peaceful walk was interrupted. At the construction site next to the building, some metal beams came loose and fell straight toward them. It all happened too fast. The landlady stood in shock, asking if everyone was okay. So-young was lying on the ground, covered in blood. She had been seriously injured while protecting her own child. Seong-guk, in shock, could only think that she couldn't die. That was his mother. He needed her. While the landlady carried him in her arms, So-young was rushed to the emergency room. Amid the commotion, a doctor checked her records and noticed something important. Hours later, So-young woke up in the hospital. Ji-seong, relieved, asked if she was in pain, but the first thing she wanted to know was where Seong-guk was. He had been with her at the time of the accident. Ji-seong gently replied that he was fine, right nearby, and that he hadn't stopped crying since it happened. He said the boy was completely terrified when he saw her hurt. So-young smiled, even though she was weak, and tried to comfort her son. She said everything was okay, that he must have been scared, but that she was happy he was safe. Upon hearing that, Seong-guk couldn't hold back and started to cry. He was deeply shaken. He thought about how his mother hadn't hesitated for a second to risk her life to protect him. And what if she really had died? Soon after, So-young noticed the room she was in. It looked like a private room, and she found it strange since her condition didn't even seem that serious. She asked how they had gotten such an expensive room. Ji-seong explained that the doctors said she needed complete rest because it was a delicate situation. The bed she was in was part of an intensive care unit for pregnant women. Surprised, So-young could hardly process the news. Ji-seong, with a shy smile, said yes. It was unexpected, but what mattered now was that she recover well. Shortly after, a nurse came in and announced that visiting hours were over, asking them to leave. Seong-guk, still very shaken, had his face all red from crying so much. They walked back home on foot. Since they were even saving on bus fare, to cover the cost of the mother's treatment. As they walked, he thought about how harsh that life was, miserable. But at the same time, he recognized something he had never had before: a father who worked tirelessly to support the family, a mother who would risk her life for him without hesitation. That was when, for the first time, Seong-guk spoke his first word, Dada. Ji-seong was completely shocked. He repeated aloud, in disbelief, that his son had called him daddy. For Seong-guk, in that moment, everything became clear. These people were his family now. They were his parents. A week later, the house was filled with joy. There were sweets and decorations everywhere. It was a small welcome home party to celebrate So-young's recovery. Everyone was dressed in festive clothes, especially Seong-guk, who looked adorable in his new outfit. The parents took lots of pictures of him, enchanted by how much he looked like a celebrity baby. But Seong-guk couldn't relax. He wondered if this was really the right moment to celebrate. His father had struggled to pay every cent of the medical bills, to the point of giving up public transport. In a reality where every coin counts, did it make sense to celebrate a first birthday and the return from the hospital? Before, he would have scolded them for this kind of behavior, but now he understood. This was love, the kind of love that money can't buy, love that risks its own life, and he felt truly happy to, for the first time, have loving parents. During the week his mother was in the hospital, Seong-guk made a decision. He needed to put in effort, to be realistic. He knew his parents would never escape poverty doing what they currently did. Seong-guk knew his parents couldn't save money, no matter how hard they tried. And to make things worse, he was sure the country would soon face a severe economic crisis. It was in this scenario that the building's landlady, Kim Mi-young, showed up. She said she heard that So-young had been discharged and decided to stop by to see how she was doing. She also suggested something unexpected. She asked if they had ever thought about putting the baby to work as a child actor or commercial model. In Seong-guk's eyes, that was the true beginning of everything, a real opportunity to make money. Sometime later, So-young took Seong-guk to the audition, which was being held in a large building. Looking around, he thought the place was, at the very least, decent enough for him. So-young, on the other hand, was nervous and hoped everything would go well. To Seong-guk, that kind of insecurity was annoying. He believed this was a golden moment, not the kind of situation to be pessimistic about. Then the memory returned to a few days earlier, when Kim Mi-young had handed them a flyer. The company she worked for had been chosen to produce a TV commercial for a major conglomerate, and was looking for a baby actor for an important role. She said that Seong-guk was very handsome and had a natural talent for it. Upon hearing that, Seong-guk could barely contain his inner laughter. He believed that those born for success would achieve it one way or another. To him, this was the chance to start building wealth early. In his previous life, he was always surrounded by cameras, flashes, and interviews. He knew how to deal with makeup, framing, lighting, and poses. He was known not only as a powerful heir, but also as someone who could easily pursue an acting career. He thought this would be just a simple audition, and that he wouldn't even need to try hard to stand out. All the money he earned, he planned to invest wisely. But the environment quickly became unpleasant. A rude woman yelled at So-young, asking if she was going to come in or not. This deeply irritated Seong-guk, who found the woman detestable. Still, So-young, always kind, complimented the woman's baby, saying he was also very cute. The woman wasn't the least bit polite. She asked if So-young was just there to spy on the competition, insinuating she wanted to learn the other's weaknesses. She arrogantly said it didn't matter how hard So-young tried, because her son would win no matter what. Seong-guk was outraged. He thought that woman was completely doomed. Watching her closely, he noticed she was dressed head to toe in designer brands, accompanied by a nanny who looked more like a personal servant. She was the classic arrogant madam. He decided right then that he would get revenge on her and defeat her son in that competition. The audition began, going child by child. The process was simple. The babies were placed in front of the cameras, so the evaluators could observe how they reacted to the lights and whether they could express any emotion. The environment was hot and strange, making things very difficult for such young children. When it was the arrogant madam's son's turn, Seong-guk paid close attention. The boy quickly began sweating under the strong lighting, and when pressured by his mother, he started to cry. The photographer commented that it would be hard to continue like that. Even so, the woman insisted he keep going, but it was no use. They had to move on to the next child. That next child was Seong-guk. As the madam was gently escorted out by an assistant, along with her crying son, the director prepared to carefully observe the next candidate. It was time for Seong-guk to show what he could do. The auditions continued even without So-young present, and the next in line was Seong-guk. So-young was placing all her hopes on him, while the arrogant Madame Deokpung watched with disdain, hoping to see everything go wrong. But Seong-guk actually wanted her to watch, because he intended to prove that he would would succeed and her son would not. When his turn came, he made an adorable expression, so sweet and beautiful that it immediately caught the director's attention. The director quickly grabbed his camera and declared that it was time for this boy to shine. They took amazing photos and footage. He truly looked great in front of the camera. The director was impressed and declared the child a true genius. To Madame Deokpung's misfortune, the director decided to move forward with the selection process. He said that Seong-guk had already been chosen. This made So-young wonder if her son really was a genius. The director, who introduced himself as Kwak-jun, praised the boy extensively and asked if So-young wanted to discuss the contract. He wanted to know if she had any conditions or special requests. Surprised by it all, she asked if he really had that much talent. She was trying to process everything. It was all so new to her. Although Kwak had gotten a bit ahead of himself and rushed things, he insisted that Seong-guk had a gift. He explained that not only did he behave naturally in front of the camera, but he also followed all the instructions as if he truly understood them. And in fact, Seong-guk did understand everything. Kwak said he was eager to work with him. At that moment, Madame Deokpung, visibly irritated, knocked over a camera and asked what was going on. She complained that the final audition hadn't even happened yet, and they were already declaring a winner. She said she wouldn't accept any result other than her son's victory. Because of this, the final audition had to be rescheduled. So-young was a bit nervous, but she had faith in her son. He had been selected as one of the finalists, and she was sure he would stand out. Shortly before the audition, So-young needed to use the restroom. The nanny of another baby offered to watch Seong-guk for a moment. Watching the boy, the nanny commented that he truly had something special. But Madame Deokpung, overhearing that, was furious. She said it was outrageous to hear such nonsense, and threatened to fire the nanny if she kept talking like that. Seong-guk, in turn, was extremely annoyed by how the madam treated the nanny. He even thought about slapping her. He was sure he'd feel better if he did. Meanwhile, the assistant director appeared. Madame Deokpung asked what was going on. She said she had only signed her son up for the audition to create special memories for him and questioned whether it was really necessary to compete against that other boy. She wanted to know if her son, Jae-hee, hadn't already been chosen as the winner. Seong-guk quickly realized what was happening. He thought this was the clearest example of corruption and bribery. The madam was using other children as a distraction to hide her real intentions. It was a well-planned scheme. The assistant then commented that it would be a problem if the director found out, because even higher-ups often couldn't override the director's decisions. He asked if the madam was ready for the final audition. She confidently replied yes, saying she had even hired a private tutor. To the assistant, that was enough. He then commented that Seong-guk would be much worse than Jae-hee if they practiced together. He asked Jae-hee to repeat the lines next to the other boy. Later, at the actual audition, both babies were ready. They would need to say their lines naturally in front of the cameras. So Young wished her son good luck. Seong-guk stayed focused and tried to calm himself. When director Kwak gave the command action, the assistant director was already preparing his tricks to sabotage. Seong-guk knew that his posture and obedience to instructions would also influence the score. He needed to be well positioned to appear at the best angle, so he quickly stepped forward. Meanwhile, Jae-hee, the madam's son, moved in the opposite direction. The director then suggested they start the test with Seong-guk, leaving Jae-hee for later. The assistant was visibly nervous, but still believed Seong-guk would fail. However, Seong-guk said only "daddy, daddy, daddy" in such a sweet way that it moved everyone in the studio. The director, delighted, said that, as always, his eyes didn't deceive him. He knew how to recognize real talent. Madame Deokpung insisted that they look at her son Jae-hee as well, but Kwak replied that carrying the child like that would only stress him out, and that's exactly what happened. Instead of speaking, Jae-hee began crying a lot. Madame Deokpung couldn't accept the result. She said it made no sense, as she had trained Jae-hee for that moment. Kwak found her reaction strange and asked what she meant by that. The assistant director quickly stepped in, saying that the audition could now be closed, and thanked everyone for participating. Inside, Seong-guk knew there was no going back. He was the real winner. However, when the official result was announced, it said the winner of the audition was Lee Jae-hee. So Young was shocked. She said it had to be a mistake. She claimed the director had declared her son the winner. But the assistant intervened, saying that just because a child acted cute didn't mean they were ready to become an actor. Madame Deokpung was even crueler. She asked how So Young dared to think her son could win. She said So Young didn't know her place, and that for a child from such a low-class background, second place was already more than enough. She claimed they were deluding themselves and could leave now. So Young was outraged by how coldly the woman spoke, especially in front of her own son. But Seong-guk stayed strong. In fact, he had already expected this. He thought that if his calculations were correct, Kwak would walk through that door at that very moment. Ever since he heard the assistant and the madam's plan to rig the the audition, Seong-guk had completely changed his strategy. He had already faced situations like that in his previous life. He knew it was impossible to beat people who bought their way to the top. Fighting against it was like entering a losing battle. So he acted like a true businessman. He aimed higher, at the connections. Right after that, Kwok approached and asked to speak with So-young. He said the decision had come from foolish superiors and that the audition had been rigged. He personally apologized to Seong-guk, saying he didn't want him to witness such a shameful scene. He then invited So-young to participate in the filming of a commercial happening the following week. Seong-guk thought that this was just the beginning. He didn't want to be just a one-time commercial model. His goal was to win over the director, build connections, and secure ongoing roles as a child actor. He wanted to become a child star, earn money, and support his family with stability and security. Kwok explained that for baby commercials, they usually called 1 or 2 backup models. He admitted that, to be honest, he wasn't very confident in the winner's performance. For Seong-guk, that made perfect sense. The director then pleaded with So-young to bring her son for the filming. So-young was a bit hesitant, wondering if the baby would be okay, but Seong-guk gave 2 thumbs up and assured her he would. Kwok was surprised by the reaction and said that baby really seemed to understand everything. He commented that if all child actors were like him, his job would be much easier. He then asked for So-young's contact information. Days later, on the outskirts of Seoul, the film set was ready. So-young was impressed by the place. She could hardly believe something so well-structured existed in the middle of nowhere. But the bigger surprise came when the corrupt assistant director showed up. Seong-guk stared at him as if he wanted to strangle him, and he truly did. The assistant commented that he had heard Seong-guk was there as a backup model. That was when the boy noticed in the background the turbo washer from Samjeon's 3rd generation. It was a revolutionary machine that had been very successful and contributed to the company's stock growth. He remembered how emotional his grandfather had been about that success. Seong-guk then wondered if the commercial was indeed for Samjeon. At that moment, Madame Deokpung appeared, irritated, asking what those people were doing there. She wanted to know why the 2 losers were on set. So-young replied that the director had asked them to bring the boy as a backup model and asked the madam to stop talking that way in front of the baby. The assistant explained that it was just a precaution, in case Jae-hee's condition worsened and a replacement was needed. But Madame Deokpung insisted it wasn't necessary, saying Jae-hee was in excellent condition and that there was no difficulty at all in that commercial. But Seong-guk immediately realized that wasn't true. Jae-hee was visibly unwell. Even so, the madam kept insisting that the others were useless. At that moment, the lead actress, Seon-mi, arrived on set and commented that it was quite noisy. She asked if those were the babies who would be filming with her. The director then introduced the 2 boys, and both the nanny and So-young were impressed by the actress's beauty. Seon-mi soon approached Jae-hee, saying they would be filming together that day. But the baby didn't show any interest in her. When she approached Seong-guk, however, he became completely excited. He was thrilled to meet the lead actress because he knew it was a valuable opportunity. Seon-mi was surprised and said she had never seen such a friendly baby. So-young explained that Seong-guk was naturally very affectionate. The actress then said she found that baby much cuter and asked if she could film the scene with him. But Madame Deokpung, furious, grabbed the actress's hand and asked what she was doing. The situation became tense. So-young and Seong-guk just watched in silence, as if they were watching a movie scene, while the 2 women argued intensely. At that moment, a man appeared asking what was going on. He said he had heard shouting from afar. Seon-mi, surprised, recognized him and called him vice president, asking why he was there. The man, with a firm posture, replied that he couldn't miss the filming of the new product commercial. Seong-guk was surprised. He recognized that man as his father from his past life. He introduced himself as Jae-hyung, vice president of Samjeon. Seong-guk knew exactly what kind of person he was. Although not as extraordinary as his father, the current president John Jushin, Jae-hyung had earned his position through merit. He had led the company's restructuring, reorganized its internal structure, and invested in specialized sectors, gaining a reputation as a visionary. As vice president, he was admired, but as a man, husband, and father, Seong-guk remembered he was terrible. Seeing that mess unfold before his eyes brought back old memories. He remembered being 10 years old when his father introduced him to one of his many mistresses. At the time, he didn't care. She was just another woman, among so many others he had erased from his mind. But now he recognized her. That woman was Seon-mi, the vice president's current mistress. Seon-mi casually said she was filming with some children and particularly liked that boy. Jae-hyung agreed, saying the boy seemed very smart. Seong-guk felt extremely uncomfortable facing his father from his past life, but kept his composure. Shortly after, Jae-hyung was called away for another another appointment and had to leave. He wished everyone good luck and asked them to do their best during filming. Madame Deokpong bowed respectfully, promising to give her best. Seong-guk thought it would be difficult for someone like her to challenge the vice president of Samjeon directly, especially being the wife of a major shareholder. Despite seeming like a typical playboy surrounded by women, Jae-hyung always had a charisma that justified his position in the company. He was exactly the man Seong-guk remembered, his father. Before leaving, Jae-hyung gently patted Seong-guk on the head and advised him to be careful during filming. Then he left. At that moment, Seong-guk made a silent decision. This time, he would live differently. He had found something that was finally worth calling a family, and he would protect these people at all costs. One day, he would create a company even greater than Samjeon, and when they met again, he would be at the top. The assistant director announced that filming would begin soon, and that director Kwak would arrive at any moment. The child models were called. Both So Young and Seong-guk decided to focus on what really mattered. The commercial's content was simple but emotional. In a beautiful village in the forest, a mother washed clothes beside her baby. Among the items was a white shirt, completely soaked with sweat, that belonged to the child's father. The Samjeon washing machine was turned on and, thanks to its technology, made the shirt impeccably white. The baby, happy, rubbed his cheeks on the clean shirt and called out for his dad. The scene ended with a refreshing image of the washer, shining under the light. In Seong-guk's past life, that commercial had been a huge success. It was praised for its direction and won the Donghae Advertising Award, one of the most prestigious prizes in advertising. The child actor at the time achieved national fame, but this time, Seong-guk would be the star. That was because Jae-hee wouldn't stop crying. When Seon-mi tried to approach him, he slapped her. So Young, watching the situation, was confused and asked why the boy was acting like that all of a sudden. Seong-guk, meanwhile, simply thought to himself everything was going exactly according to his brilliant plan. Jae-hee was clearly tired and irritated by his mother's constant torment. When Kwak announced that he would be removed from the filming, Madame Deokpong protested, saying it was absurd since her son had been declared the winner. But Kwak explained that filming had been delayed for over an hour because of the boy. He refused to cooperate, wouldn't listen to instructions, and kept hitting the actress in the face. He said that with or without him, the shoot would be completed that day. Irritated, Madame Deokpong grabbed her phone and announced she would call the president of the Deokpong group directly. Watching the scene, Seong-guk found it nostalgic. That phone model looked like it came straight from the 90s. She threatened to call immediately and replace everyone involved in the shoot. However, before she could make the call, Seon-mi stepped in firmly and slapped the madam in the face. She explained that when someone outside the production starts causing trouble on set, she simply can't stay quiet. She also said that as the wife of a Deokpong executive, Madame Deokpong probably thought she was superior to everyone there. Kwak stepped in and called for a break in the shoot, but internally, both he and So Young were quietly pleased with the slap the actress had given. Seong-guk, for his part, didn't even bother to hide his smile. He was genuinely satisfied. Seon-mi then asked to resume filming, this time with Seong-guk, and Kwak quickly agreed, ordering everyone to return to their positions. Madame Deokpong, shocked, asked if they were seriously considering using that low-class brat in place of her son. She claimed that with him, the commercial would be a disaster. The red light of the cameras turned on, a symbol that had followed Seong-guk throughout his entire past life, from birth to death. He knew that acting confidently in front of the camera was one of his greatest strengths, and in that moment, he was ready to unleash his full potential. During the filming, everything went perfectly. When Seon-mi asked the baby what he thought of Daddy's clean and fragrant shirt, Seong-guk responded with the perfect expression, an adorable, natural, and charming smile. Kwak ordered the main camera to remain as it was, and told all the others to focus directly on Seong-guk. He continued acting, doing all the necessary poses, keeping his gaze firmly on the lens, as if he were communicating directly with the audience. The director was impressed. He thought that baby looked straight into the camera, with the precision of a seasoned actor. He was a genius. Even Seon-mi was thrown off, and momentarily forgot her line, distracted by his performance. At the end of the scene, Seon-mi delivered the commercial's catchphrase, wrapping up the shoot. Everyone was visibly satisfied. Kwak said it had been perfect. Later, Madame Deokpong protested once again. She said it was ridiculous that they had chosen that baby just because he looked a little cute, but Kwak responded firmly. Her son Jae-hee simply didn't know how to act, and Seong-guk had done everything perfectly, even while exhausted. Seon-mi tried to comfort So Young, telling her not to worry about the woman's yelling. Nothing could change the fact that her son was talented. The actress even said that Seong-guk was the best child actor she had ever seen. She never imagined she'd finish the entire shoot with just 2 takes. Madame Deokpung, furious, responded by saying that Seon-mi was nothing more than a mediocre actress. She asked if she had any idea how much money had been spent on that pathetic commercial. She accused the assistant director of accepting bribes and sarcastically added that he must have made a lot of money. Kwok then turned to the assistant and asked him directly if he had taken a bribe from outside sources. He said the two of them would have a serious talk as soon as everything was wrapped up. Madame Deokpung, enraged, shouted that she didn't need any of that and that no one cared about that useless commercial. She declared that she would sue everyone involved. Seong-guk, tired, mumbled softly, "Good riddance. For God's sake, I was sick of her already." Kwok apologized to So-young, but she replied that there was no need to apologize. Everyone had worked hard. The director thanked her deeply for the effort. He said he didn't even want to imagine what would have happened if Seong-guk hadn't been there that day. With filming complete, they were dismissed. Payment would be sent soon. So-young and Seong-guk returned home happy. The little one could barely keep his eyes open. He was nearly collapsing from sleep. All he wanted now was to rest. After all, acting is exhausting. Very much so. Before they left, Seon-mi offered them a ride in her van. Seong-guk fell asleep in the back seat immediately, while So-young thanked her sincerely. But Seon-mi replied that actually, she was the one who should be thankful. Seong-guk had been an exceptional actor. Thanks to him, she was able to finish the job early that day. Seon-mi remarked in admiration that Seong-guk not only followed the camera naturally, but seemed to instinctively understand how it worked. She said he adjusted to the pace of the commercial as if he knew exactly when and how to react to each movement. At one point, unintentionally, or perhaps intentionally, he even subtly corrected the angle of her face, improving the composition of the shot. For Seon-mi, it had been the best performance. She stated with conviction that Seong-guk completely dominated the screen, as if he were already a trained actor. In her eyes, he wasn't just promising, he was already complete. It was then that she looked at So-young seriously and said she wanted to make a suggestion. At that moment, even after a full day of filming, Seong-guk, who had been sleeping deeply in the van's seat, opened his eyes. He had silently woken up just to hear every word. Later, the landlady personally delivered the payment to the family, totaling 4 million won. The original amount was supposed to be 3 million, but director Kwok decided to add a bonus, showing his satisfaction with the work. At that moment, Seong-guk was certain that taking on the role of child actor had been the right choice. After all, how else could he earn so much money while still in the body of a baby? That amount would be a great starting capital, especially if he thought about investing wisely, perhaps even in stocks or gold. Ji-seong was impressed to see so much money at once, something he had never experienced before. Meanwhile, So-young looked thoughtful. She soon shared with the landlady that the day before, she had received something from an actress, a business card. It was a card from Sinsung Entertainment Agency. The actress had shown great interest in Seong-guk and said she wanted to take him as an exclusive child actor for her agency. Ji-seong then asked if they were really considering turning their son into a celebrity. So-young said she was happy that Seong-guk had done so well, but everything had happened very suddenly. At that moment, Mi-young, the landlady, said they didn't need to worry. She herself could help. She had heard of Sinsung Entertainment and promised to investigate who the CEO was and how the artists were treated there. Mi-young's words made So-young excited. Seong-guk, on the other hand, wondered if the landlady was really willing to go that far for him. Mi-young continued to show support and even congratulated Seong-guk and his family for his debut as a commercial model. The advertisement, according to her, would air for the first time in 2 weeks. However, before leaving, So-young followed her to the door. She was curious about the reason behind so much support. Mi-young then explained that she recognized Seong-guk's talent and wanted to help them. She said she had lived alone from a young age, had faced many difficulties, and had to save even on food and clothes to buy the building. It was during that time that she met Ji-seong and his family when they moved in as tenants. Seeing such a young couple working so hard was something she deeply admired. For that reason, Mi-young wanted to cheer for them and support them in any way she could, even if it seemed like interference. She asked them not to feel pressured by her help. So-young, touched, asked if she could call her a friend. She wanted to treat her as part of the family and even prepare meals for her. Mi-young smiled at the warm gesture and said that was fine. Seong-guk thought that, in the end, everything had turned out well. The atmosphere in that home was truly welcoming. 2 weeks later, Ji-seong's restaurant was already closing. He sincerely thanked his boss, Park Won, who had closed up early just so everyone could watch the premiere of Seong-guk's commercial together. Park Won himself, bald and always friendly, said it was no problem at all, and that he also wanted to see the ad, especially since since the restaurant had a big TV. Seung-guk observed everything and thought that if that man weren't his father's boss, he might not tolerate so much affection. But out of respect, he decided to let it go. Shortly after, Mi-young also arrived to watch the commercial. She said it looked like they were getting ready to watch a group movie. Ji-seong asked everyone to get comfortable because the commercial was about to start. The ad began with the narrator's voice from Monomi, and everyone got excited as soon as Seung-guk appeared on screen. When the little boy made his cute pose, there was a collective attack of adorableness. Everyone was charmed. Park Won praised the ad, saying it was perfect. Mi-young also pointed out that the editing was excellent, and that, with some luck, the commercial could even win an Advertisement of the Year award. Seung-guk thought she really had a good eye, because that was exactly what was going to happen. Ji-seong, with eyes shining with pride, commented on how happy he was for his son. Then, the restaurant phone rang. Park Won answered, and on the other end was director Kwak, who had filmed the commercial with Seung-guk. He had heard that everyone was gathered watching the ad and said he had an urgent matter to discuss with the family. At that moment, director Kwak was in a room filled with famous actors. As soon as the family arrived for the meeting, Seung-guk ran to him and called him director. Kwak smiled and commented, surprised how the little boy was already talking like that. So-young explained that he was at a stage where he constantly babbled, so his vocabulary was growing rapidly. Kwak thought that was great and said they could now write longer lines for him. Seung-guk thought to himself that soon he would be reciting any script he received. Kwak, excited, said he was looking forward to seeing the boy's development. Then he revealed the reason for the meeting. He wanted to invite Seung-guk to be the star of a new show called Just Baby, a reality show about parenting. The idea was to gather 5 members of popular idol groups to live together with little Seung-guk, forming a kind of improvised family with him. Suddenly, the door opened and Tae-hyung, the leader of the group Just, entered. So-young was extremely excited to see Seung-guk. Tae-hyung commented that it seemed like she already knew their group. So-young confirmed, saying she had seen them on TV before. Tae-hyung explained that, although they still had a lot to improve, they were working hard to become the best group in the country. Meanwhile, Ji-seong became visibly jealous of the situation, which made Seung-guk think that jealousy was an ugly feeling. Kwak added that once filming started, the other group members would also get to meet the baby. However, So-young expressed concern, asking if all of that wouldn't be too overwhelming for their son. Upon hearing that, Seung-guk thought he would never forget that his mother had chosen him over an idol. One of the producers said he believed Seung-guk was the true heart of the show. He not only understood and connected with what was happening, but seemed to truly feel it. His facial expressions were natural and expressive, and he always seemed to know exactly where the camera was, as if he had been born for it. To him, it was impossible to imagine anyone else as the star of the show. Seung-guk also remembered that in his past life, he had watched this very show. The concept was unique, bringing together a group of idols with a charming baby. It wasn't surprising that people of all ages had fallen in love with it. In the end, the show became a national sensation and the first to establish the genre of parenting reality shows. It was the perfect format to turn a baby into a future child star. At one point, excited, Seung-guk called out to the director several times. However, Ji-seong started to show some concern. He worried that if Seung-guk kept appearing on TV so often, he wouldn't grow up like a normal child. He didn't want to raise him as a celebrity, but simply as a loved and ordinary child. Tae-hyung understood this feeling and shared his own experience. He had also been a child actor and knew well what it was like to grow up under the public eye. Even so, he had no regrets. He knew he had talent for performing and acting, and understood that growing up under constant attention was part of the path. That's why he asked why Ji-seong wouldn't trust his own son's talent. If the boy had the ability to shine, he deserved the opportunity to do so. Ji-seong reflected on those words, agreed they were true, and asked the team to take good care of his son. He went straight to the point and said he was excited to work with them, thus beginning a new chapter in the young actor's life. With 12 days left until the premiere of Korea's first parenting reality show, Just Baby, the parents signed the contracts. There were many documents and bureaucratic steps. 5 days before the premiere, the photo session took place with everyone involved in the project. Finally, the long-awaited day of filming arrived. On that day, all members of the group Just were present. The leader Tae-hyung, along with Lucas, Jae-hyun, Beom-seon, and Michael. So-young was excited to meet them all in person. Tae-hyung also expressed his happiness to work with her son. He said he had already heard a lot about Seung-guk and knew that the baby's mother was a fan of the group. Seung-guk, however, was restless. He felt jealous and worried about his father. Director Kwok explained that from that day on, filming would take place at the dorm of the group Just. The network had high expectations for the show, so everyone needed to do their best. Seung-guk recognized all the members. They were exactly the same as he had known in his past life. He remembered seeing them at Sanjeon Company events, where he worked as vice president. At the time, the group just performed at corporate meetings. Even as a baby, Seung-guk looked suspiciously at Byung-seon, who was trying to touch him too freely. He thought that was inappropriate and felt he deserved a slap for acting so casually with a baby. Taehyung, noticing the situation, scolded his groupmate, saying he had smoked and hadn't even washed his hands, yet still wanted to touch the baby with those dirty hands. Seung-guk thought that Korean-American was just as troublesome as in his previous life. Despite everything, Seung-guk decided he would take control of the show. He knew that, with his experience and intelligence, he could create perfect character arcs for each member of the group. However, he noticed that Michael seemed to be plotting something. Meanwhile, director Kwok explained the schedule. From that day on, there would be 3 filming sessions inside the Just Group's dormitory. The footage would then be edited into 3 pilot episodes. Based on the audience's reaction, they would decide whether to move forward with a regular broadcast. During the day, the filming would be supervised by the crew. At night, all the professionals would leave, and the place would be monitored by fixed surveillance cameras. Meanwhile, Seung-guk's parents would stay in a nearby hotel, always ready in case they were needed. Director Kwok assured them he understood the family's concern about being away from their child, but promised they would take the utmost care with the baby. The members of Just also promised they would look after him with dedication. Later, the assistant director informed them that they were ready to begin the first scene, which would start with a narration. It would be an introduction to the show, showing the Just Group facing a major challenge, a baby mysteriously left at their door as if delivered by surprise. During filming, the group members just stared at Seung-guk, unsure of what to do. So Young, observing the scene, asked if there were any lines in the script. Ji-seong explained that since it was a reality show, there were no scripted lines. The goal was to capture genuine reactions. The assistant commented that the members didn't seem to know how to react to a baby's presence. The Just Group wondered what they were supposed to say or do. No one knew exactly how to interact with Seung-guk, and he in turn thought these fools were clearly lost. So he decided to take the lead in that situation. As expected, when placed in a new environment, Seung-guk began to cry a lot. The group jumped into action to calm him, but Taehyung held him completely wrong. Then Jaehyun stepped in, gently picking up the baby in a delicate gesture that calmed him instantly. Seung-guk thought everything was going exactly as he had imagined. Each of those guys had a unique and well-defined personality. Jaehyun was clearly the responsible and intelligent leader, almost like a father. Taehyung, with his gentle, narcissistic, and slightly feminine demeanor, gave off a maternal vibe. Lucas was the athletic type, calm, with the air of a friendly older brother. Byung-seon, more reserved, treated everyone with sweetness and care. It was the perfect setup for a kind of pretend family play, except for Michael. That guy was completely out of place. Watching Michael's behavior, Seung-guk decided he would work better as a rival than a villain, for the good of the group's success. So he gave Michael a defiant look. The others thought it was just time to change the diaper and that the baby was simply interacting. But Michael stepped forward, saying he would take care of it. He explained that he had raised 3 younger siblings back in his hometown, Los Angeles, and changing diapers was second nature to him. However, Seung-guk, sticking to his rivalry plan, decided to get revenge and peed in Michael's face. The reaction was immediate. Michael became furious and tried to lunge at the baby, but the moment was so absurd and unexpected that the whole crew, including the director, burst into laughter. It was the perfect comedic scene for the show. Later, director Kwok announced they would take a 2-hour break before starting the night filming. The Just Group was completely exhausted, and many were muttering about how tiring reality shows were. Jaehyun proudly commented that Seung-guk had done really well, and the baby, in turn, thought that for him, this was only the beginning. He went for a snack while Taehyung approached Ji-seong. He said that little Seung-guk was fascinating. Whenever he was near him, he felt completely immersed in the moment without even realizing it. Everything felt natural, but somehow it always ended up being a perfect, entertaining scene. It was as if Seung-guk understood exactly the role of each member and adapted to it during filming. Ji-seong replied that it was probably just a coincidence, but Taehyung insisted that even though he was just a baby, Seung-guk was shining more than he had expected. Meanwhile, Michael was still annoyed by everything that had happened. He kept thinking that he was an artist, not a babysitter. When the assistant asked if he could store a bowl in the fridge, Michael wanted to know what it was. The assistant explained it was baby food for Seung-guk's dinner, and Michael, with a sly smile, said to give it to him, as he would take care of it himself. With questionable intentions, Michael decided to put hot sauce in the baby's food. It was an outrageous plan. Who would put chili in a child's meal? Clearly upset, he muttered to himself that he was an artist and couldn't stand that brat. Since the baby had peed on his face, he would get his revenge in a funny way. With the hidden cameras in place, Director Kwok started the night's shoot. The Just members were tired and unsure of what to do. Byung-seon mentioned he wanted to relax, but with cameras everywhere, it was difficult. Lucas asked if they could at least eat dinner first. Meanwhile, Jaehyun was lying on the floor, exhausted. Taehyung remembered they also needed to feed the baby and asked where the food was. That was when Michael replied that he had already taken care of it. Everyone was surprised by his initiative. Lucas commented that Michael had been so annoying earlier, and now he seemed cooperative. Michael insisted that he would feed Seong-guk with his own hands. Seong-guk found everything very suspicious and handed a spoon to Michael, insisting he taste the food first. The young man was startled by the gesture, not understanding why the baby was asking him to try the food. To Seong-guk, it was obvious. He would never eat anything without checking it first. Taehyung, noticing the hesitation, asked why Michael hadn't eaten yet. Michael, flustered, said it didn't make sense to accept food from a child. But Taehyung commented that he was being heartless. He took the spoon, tasted it, and immediately felt the burn. Lucas, seeing his reaction, asked what had happened. Already suspicious, Seong-guk grew irritated and wondered how Michael dared mess with his food. Taehyung commented that it tasted spicy, and the others questioned how chili had ended up in the baby's meal. When asked if it was Michael, he ended up confessing. He said it was just a joke, a humorous touch for the recordings. But Jaehyun, serious, scolded him. He wanted to know if Michael had gone insane and if he truly wanted the baby to get sick. Seong-guk thought Jaehyun was actually pretty cool. Byung-seon apologized on Michael's behalf, saying he could be a bit childish sometimes. Michael, irritated, asked why they were even talking to a baby, claiming he wouldn't understand. Taehyung, with a smile, replied that Seong-guk was much smarter than he looked. Even if he didn't understand everything, Michael should still apologize. Satisfied, Seong-guk thought that this group had great potential for entertainment, and that from that moment on, he would be the one guiding everyone in the right direction. Later, everyone learned that the first episode of Just Baby, which had aired the previous Friday, reached 20 rating points. That meant about 20% of televisions in Korea were tuned into the program. So-young happily commented that the audience clearly enjoyed it because Seong-guk was part of it. Still, she noted that 20 points wasn't something supernatural, but Mi-young disagreed. To her, it was incredible and phenomenal. She explained that top programs on the major channels usually averaged around 15 points, so that result was truly impressive. Director Kwok confirmed that, with this success, the show would officially enter the network's regular programming. Mi-young congratulated little Seong-guk, saying that with him in charge, such success was already expected. But Seong-guk wasn't satisfied with just that. His real goal was to gain money, fame, and become a successful entrepreneur. More than that, he wanted to reach the top of the world. In his mind, he laughed mischievously, a baby's evil laugh. To everyone else, Mi-young simply thought he looked like an ordinary child. So-young then mentioned that someone from Sinsung Entertainment had visited their house a few days earlier. They came to congratulate them on the show's success, brought a basket of fruit, and said that the company's director, Shin Sung-jung, wanted to meet them personally. So-young asked what they should do. Mi-young replied that, as she had mentioned before, she had been researching the company. She said that although Sinsung Entertainment held great influence in the entertainment industry, there were many negative rumors about the company, and especially its CEO. There were even suspicions of involvement with gangs. Still, Mi-young acknowledged that it was hard to refuse an invitation from someone as powerful as Shin Sung-jung, so she suggested it would be best to at least hear him out. If it didn't suit them, they could simply say no and leave. Upon hearing that name, Seong-guk grew alert. He was sure he knew Shin Sung-jung from somewhere. Then he remembered. It was that man. He knew exactly who he was, and he also knew he needed to stop the women from accepting any offer. Shin Sung-jung was not someone you made contracts with. He had to act before it was too late. When they arrived for the meeting, Shin Sung-jung welcomed them warmly and asked them to feel at ease. Mi-young politely thanked him for the invitation and asked what he wanted to discuss. Shin Sung-jung explained that he wanted to offer a great opportunity for dear Seong-guk, which immediately bothered the baby, who thought to himself, since when did that man have the right to talk about him like that? The director then presented a proposal for an exclusive contract with Sinsung Entertainment, the #1 agency in Korea. According to his own words, he promised many benefits as an exclusive partner and spoke of a 10-year contract. He mentioned well-known names from the agency, such as Jang Dong and Seon-mi, saying that with this contract, Seong-guk would be among the stars. According to him, the company deeply valued the baby's talent. Meanwhile, Seong-guk, suspicious, wanted to see the contract with his own eyes. When Mi-young examined the terms, she found something outrageous. The contract offered a 30% profit share for the family and 70% for the company. To Seung-guk, it was ridiculous, practically a slave contract. It was a typical scheme to exploit newcomers in the entertainment industry. At that moment, he remembered his past life. Shin Sung-jung was very close to the SJN company, especially his father, who was then the vice director. His father had arranged for all company ads to be tied to Sinsung Entertainment. In return, Shin sent celebrities from his agency to the corporate events of Sanjeon. But everything collapsed when Shin was arrested, accused of involvement in the black market and of stealing artists from his own agency. Despite all that dark past, Shin Sung-jung kept trying to persuade the family. He said he had been in the industry for a long time and had never seen a child actor with as much talent as Seung-guk. He claimed that if they trusted him, they could elevate the boy's career like never before. Mi-young, without hesitation, apologized and said they would decline the contract. Seung-guk, impressed, thought she was truly brilliant. Shin Sung-jung, annoyed, wanted to know the reason. Mi-young explained that a 30-70 split was absurd and that a 10-year contract didn't align with their plans for the boy. Seung-guk's value would still grow a lot, and accepting such an unfair agreement was unthinkable. Shin Sung-jung tried to insist. He asked if she really trusted the boy that much. He said he understood the emotional attachment, but the market for child actors was small compared to adult actors. He hinted that the success might not last. Seung-guk, indignant, wondered who that man thought he was. Then Shin Sung-jung said something even more offensive. He asked what they would do if the boy turned ugly as he grew up. He said that if his appearance changed, he might completely lose his value as a celebrity. So-young, horrified, reacted immediately, saying she couldn't believe he had said that in front of a child. Meanwhile, Seung-guk, offended, looked at Shin Sung-jung and thought he looked more like an old frog. As for himself, he would grow up handsome, radiant, and become a true star. Mi-young believed that Shin had no eye for recognizing talent. Because of that, she decided to leave with the others. Before they could leave, Shin asked what right she had to speak like that, since she wasn't even Seung-guk's mother. He added that outsiders shouldn't get involved in such matters. So-young tried to reply, but Mi-young interrupted, saying she was Seung-guk's manager, more specifically, his agent, which made her responsible for matters like that. She explained that she worked for an advertising company and, after seeing the contract, was certain it was unfair. With that, they left. Shin, irritated, said they would all regret it and asked if they really thought they could underestimate him. Mi-young simply replied that soon everyone would see what would happen. Once outside, Mi-young was furious that the old man had threatened a child. So-young's mother commented that he didn't even seem human and asked her daughter if she was okay. So-young looked shaken but said she was fine thanks to Mi-young. She mentioned she had seen men like that in many corners of the industry and said there was no reason to sign a contract with such a terrible company. That was when So-young asked if Mi-young could be Seung-guk's real agent and not just pretend. Seung-guk thought it wasn't a bad idea. In fact, it was an excellent idea. He realized that in the entertainment industry there were many talented people, but very few truly trustworthy ones. Mi-young had great knowledge, was close to the family, and had a natural talent for handling that kind of thing. Mi-young felt flattered, but confessed she wasn't an expert in the entertainment world. Still, Seung-guk looked at her with an adorable expression, and using his baby talk, said he wanted her to be his agent. So Young commented that it was obvious how much Seung-guk liked her. The boy's own mother admitted that she and her husband didn't understand anything about the industry and asked Mi-young to please protect their son's future. In response, Mi-young said that thanks to them, she might finally have a chance to fulfill one of her own dreams. So she accepted and promised to do her best as his agent. Shortly after, So-young and Seung-guk hugged right there in the middle of the street, and the boy thought that together they could make a fortune. Later on, Shin began investigating the family and found out that Mi-young really worked for an advertising company and owned the house where Seung-guk lived with his parents. He concluded that, since they had refused the contract, it was time to show how cruel the entertainment world could be. So he called in the reporters. A few days later during a show, Michael and Seung-guk were competing to see who could eat more bananas. Michael said he also loved bananas, but everyone kept giving the best ones to Seung-guk. The boy on his side was eating so much just to avoid handing them over to that unpleasant guy. Despite everything, the filming turned out great and very funny. As expected, Michael officially became Seung-guk's rival, and the Christmas special was already approaching. After filming ended, everyone started preparing for the morning break. So-young was now clearly showing her baby bump. Kwok asked if it wasn't too much for her to spend so long on set while waiting for the baby's birth. So-young said that by now it had become routine, and she actually found it fun to be there. Even so, Kwok pointed out that she wasn't alone, and if anything got difficult, she just needed to say so. He then asked for the baby's due date. So-young said it was very soon. Taking the opportunity, Kwok also also commented on Michael, saying that everyone was enjoying his rivalry with Seung-guk, but that sometimes Michael went overboard. He wanted to know if that bothered So Young in any way. She replied that she trusted the director on that matter, but Mi-young was also keeping an eye on it. During the break, Seung-guk could barely eat, as he was full of bananas and a bit sleepy. That's when Michael showed up talking badly about him and asked why he had really hit him in the face earlier. Seung-guk thought that, from the beginning, he had been patient with Michael's behavior. Even so, they had managed to film some very funny scenes. Still, Seung-guk thought it would be best to stay alert around Michael, who called him a crazy baby and pinched his cheek. The boy started crying a lot, and Michael said he hadn't even pinched him hard enough for that reaction. At that moment, Mi-young appeared and asked if he really had pinched Seung-guk. Seung-guk felt relieved because his agent had arrived. Mi-young then complained that even during filming, Michael was touching the boy too much and told him to control himself. Michael questioned why she was protecting some random kid so much. Mi-young firmly replied that thanks to that random kid, their group had landed several commercial deals. Mi-young looked at Michael sternly and said that in that environment, he needed to be professional and keep his hands off the baby. Of course, Michael was extremely irritated by that. He thought he had come to Korea to become an artist, not a babysitter. He also felt that even the other members of the Just group had been looking at him strangely since the last incident. Then suddenly, the phone next to him rang. When Michael answered, he saw it was a call from Sinsung Entertainment. Later, after filming ended, everyone was gathered while Kwok prepared a special announcement. He said he would be giving a bonus to everyone due to their recent good performance, meaning more money. He explained that the show had reached 30% viewership the previous week. Everyone was loving the show with Seung-guk, and since they were nearing the end of the season, that bonus was a way to acknowledge the team's efforts. Next, Kwok presented the plan for the Christmas special episode. With the date approaching, the production was asked to create a special 1.5-hour edition. He even commented that Seung-guk had been moving around a lot lately, and the boy thought that was true, since he had been training every day with walks and runs. Kwok said he was considering preparing Christmas costumes for both the Just group and Seung-guk, and was thinking about organizing a themed party. It seemed the little one liked the idea too. However, the meeting was interrupted when the assistant director arrived with troubling news. An article had been published about Seung-guk's family and was on the front page of the newspapers. The article suggested that the parents were greedily taking advantage of the child's fame. Later, everyone was watching TV because, as expected, the news had also spread to television channels. Reporters discussed the article in a serious tone, saying Seung-guk might be mistreated by his parents. Some people thought the article was irresponsible, lacking sources or evidence, but the general public was alarmed by the possibility. Kwok, worried, turned off the TV. So Young asked what they should do now. Kwok said there was no need to panic because there was always someone trying to take advantage of other people's success, especially in the entertainment industry. Mi-young said she would also investigate and try to find out who published that article. Then Seung-guk stood up and told them not to worry, asking Kwok to handle everything. Ji-seong, his father, asked him not to be so harsh with the director. Seung-guk reflected that media battles were actually power struggles, and it was urgent to find out who published the article and what they hoped to gain by attacking his family. In the end, he thought, it was the director who needed to act first. Kwok agreed and said he was responsible for the filming and broadcasts, so he would take care of the situation. He warned that, for now, reporters would be hanging around, and the paparazzi could become overwhelming. It was better for Seung-guk to stay home for a while. He also asked the parents to avoid bringing him to the studio. Mi-young offered to accompany Seung-guk to the studio when necessary. Kwok thought it was a great idea. Mi-young commented that there was still a lot to discuss, and Kwok, already leaving, assured them he would solve everything as quickly as possible. Shortly after, he met with an assistant who was waiting outside. Kwok explained that the article claimed to be based on a report from an internal production source. That indicated the lie came from someone involved in the filming. The assistant immediately denied any involvement and said that after the last problem he caused, he had almost been fired, so he wouldn't risk anything again. He said he washed his hands of the matter. Kwok was left wondering who else could have done something like that. Meanwhile, with the streets decorated for Christmas and snow gently falling, a woman walked discreetly while pushing a baby stroller. She wore a mask and dark sunglasses. Some women passing by commented that she looked a bit suspicious. Inside the stroller, Seung-guk was already starting to fuss. So Young asked him to be quiet. She was unsure whether she should have left the house since she had promised the director she would stay in, but she was feeling suffocated. She told herself it would just be a quick walk to meet her husband and that there wouldn't be a problem. So Young knew the boy was uncomfortable, but said it would only take a moment. However, Seong-guk felt humiliated being pushed in a stroller at his age. He wanted to walk on his own. It was at that moment that So-young heard those same girls talking about the reality show, Just Baby. They were excited about the special Christmas episode, imagining everyone in holiday costumes and the set all decorated. They commented that Seong-guk was very cute. So-young smiled and thought those girls had good taste. However, they soon also brought up the article that had been published. They said the boy's parents seemed to be taking advantage of his fame out of greed. One of them mentioned that he was only 2 years old, but already seemed unusually perceptive for his age. After they walked away, So-young was clearly shaken by the comments. She tried to hide it, but her emotions were visible. Shortly after, Ji-seong appeared and asked if they had really gone out in the middle of such cold weather. Only then did Seong-guk realize that So-young was crying. He understood that the news was becoming more dangerous by the day. It was urgent to think of a way to respond. Because of that, Ji-seong decided to confront the director and ask what was going on. They couldn't take the pressure anymore. Kwok tried to apologize. He said they had tried to find more information, but hadn't gotten much. Since Seong-guk was someone who drew a lot of public attention, comments and gossip kept surfacing. The situation was only getting worse. Even so, Ji-seong insisted that it wasn't enough to stay still. They needed to do something. Kwok then suggested that maybe a more direct approach would work better. Specifically, he proposed a live interview. On December 31st, everyone gathered for the final recording. The show was already being filmed, marking the year's end. It was the last episode. During the broadcast, Ji Ryung commented on how fast time had passed alongside dear Seong-guk. He explained that there would be just one more New Year's special to wrap up the reality show. Meanwhile, the technical assistant informed them that, with the episode airing, it was time for Seong-guk's parents to participate too. He said they had made a good decision. An interview like that was a great opportunity to clarify all the controversies and rumors. And since it would be recorded privately, they didn't need to be so nervous. The assistant said they weren't recording yet. He was still adjusting the equipment. Even so, So-young was visibly nervous. Ji-seong was already apologizing. He knew his wife's due date was approaching, and that everything was demanding too much from her. But So-young reassured him. She said he was doing everything for the good of their family, and that he was an amazing father. While the two embraced affectionately, Min-young arrived bringing Seong-guk, dressed in his little bear outfit. Min-young commented that she was surprised to hear about the interview and noticed that Seong-guk seemed deep in thought. He knew his parents were humble and shy people, so it felt bold to see them agree to something as public as a live interview. Seong-guk wondered why they were doing this so suddenly. So-young, trying to comfort him, said he looked very handsome that day. She asked him to trust in his mommy and daddy. They would do everything they could to put an end to all those cruel rumors. Seong-guk wondered if all of that was being done because of him. He knew his parents got nervous even in front of strangers, and now they were facing the cameras for his sake. Moved, he hugged them, silently thanking them. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. It wasn't the director. Moments later, Ji Ryung burst in, desperate, wanting to know what was going on. He asked what they meant by a live interview. The assistant tried to explain. He said the interview was meant to clear up the rumors about Seong-guk's parents, but it seemed the information had leaked. Several reporters had shown up unexpectedly. Tae-hyung looked for director Kwok and demanded that everything be stopped immediately. The number of journalists present was completely out of control, but Kwok said the interview had already started. He had even tried to stop it, but it was already too late. Seong-guk's parents were very nervous about the situation. Ji-seong, worried about his pregnant wife, asked for silence. He told everyone to stop flashing the camera lights, as it only made her more anxious. Ji-seong spoke up. He said that many articles were spreading lies about their family, but the truth was that he and his wife had grown up together in an orphanage. They had nothing except each other. They worked hard day and night just to build a family. They were proud of what they had created. He also explained that Seong-guk's talent hadn't been discovered by them, but by someone close to the family. He said they weren't in it for the money. One of the reporters asked how they could believe him. He questioned whether there was any proof, since their bank records told a different story. Seong-guk was furious. He went up to the cameras and asked them not to talk like that about his parents. His gaze carried the fury of his past life, as if summoning a demonic spirit. The reporters were visibly shaken by his reaction. Seong-guk ran to his father and asked if he was okay. Ji-seong, emotional, apologized and said he was bad with words. Seong-guk believed everything was fine. His father had done the best he could. Then he looked at his mother and asked if she was okay too. Shortly after, So-young said that maybe they should go to the hospital right away. That was when Ji-seong realized what was happening. She was having contractions, Without wasting time, they rushed her straight to the ambulance. Ji-seong held her hand and asked her to hang in there just a little longer. They would be at the hospital soon. Meanwhile, Seung-guk wondered what he should do in a situation like that. In his past life, he had never experienced marriage or the birth of a child, but now he had to do something to help. Later, already at the hospital, Seung-guk was holding his newborn baby brother in his arms. Everyone around commented on how adorable that scene was. The assistant director approached and said that So-young had been through a lot. He asked if she was okay, and she said yes, thanking everyone for their help. The assistant also remarked that the new baby was just as beautiful as the first. He said Mingguk was no joke. When he tried to touch the baby's cheeks, Seung-guk stopped him. He thought it was irresponsible to touch a newborn like that without even washing his hands. The assistant laughed and said he was doing a great job as an older brother. Seung-guk thought that in his past life, he wouldn't have even called that having a brother, but now he had a real one, and he promised himself that he would take very good care of him. Kwak then asked the parents if he could take some photos of Seung-guk with Mingguk because the public was eager to see this moment. Ji-seong agreed, and Seung-guk, as expected, struck his poses in front of the camera. Later, Ji-seong asked what had really happened with the interview. They left the place so suddenly. Kwak replied that things were almost all resolved. He explained that Tae-hyung had discovered that the person who leaked the information was Michael. He said he had already suspected that something strange was going on inside the group since the articles came from internal leaks. Michael tried to defend himself, saying that it had nothing to do with him. But Tong explained that they had already been suspicious of him, so Lucas followed him discreetly. They discovered that he had been meeting several times with Shin Sung-jung, the CEO of Sung Entertainment. Tae-hyung said he spoke with Mi-young, Seung-guk's personal agent, and she knew very well what kind of person that man was. He then asked if Michael had really helped that guy destroy Seung-guk's image and his family's. After that, all accusations fell on Shin Sung-jung. He took responsibility for his actions and ended up being arrested, just like in Seung-guk's past life, though now in a different context. Ji-seong was very surprised to learn that Shin Sung-jung and Michael were arrested together. Kwak admitted that he honestly didn't understand what Michael had been thinking, but Toon wanted to apologize for everything Michael had done, and the Just Group committed to covering all hospital expenses for Mingguk's birth. Kwak also made himself available, saying he would do whatever was needed to help. Ji-seong thanked them for the private room they were staying in. He imagined it was expensive, but he didn't mind. He said what he wanted most was for those nasty rumors to disappear from his family's life. Kwak reassured him, saying that thanks to the public interview, the misunderstanding about Seung-guk's family had been resolved. He promised to handle the rest, including teaching a lesson to the irresponsible reporters. Kwak also informed them that because of all these events, the show would take a 2-month break, but that wasn't a problem, as there were already pre-recorded episodes ready to air during that time. This way, the family could rest and recover. He promised that the show would return in the spring. Meanwhile, somewhere else, someone was watching the news. As expected, they were talking about the nation's baby. They mentioned that the show Just Baby would be returning soon. Seon-mi asked the vice president of Song, who had been Seung-guk's father in his past life, what he was watching. She realized that the person on TV was none other than Seung-guk. Jae-hyung asked if she knew him. Seon-mi replied yes, that he was the boy from the washing machine commercial. Jae-hyung then remembered. That was the child who had really caught his attention in the past. Seon-mi commented that maybe it was because that boy was a true genius. She said he had all the qualities of a good actor, and that he could definitely become anything in the future. Jae-hyung asked if she was sure, or if he wasn't just another child actor with fleeting fame, but Seon-mi assured him that wasn't the case. She said she had a great eye for talent, and even SS had tried to take advantage of that kid, and completely failed. Jae-hyung asked if she wasn't part of that company, but Seon-mi said that after all the confusion, she broke the contract and left. She said that, in fact, it worked out really well for her. Jae-hyung wanted to know what she planned to do next. Seon-mi replied that she had an idea. She planned to take things slowly and see how it all developed. She suggested that if he was interested, maybe he should consider investing in Seung-guk. Jae-hyung thought that actually didn't sound like a bad idea. Meanwhile, at Seung-guk's house, everyone was gathered eating seaweed soup. When he smelled it, he thought it seemed delicious, despite its strange appearance. Seung-guk was surprised to realize Mi-young could cook that well. So-young was also very grateful for today. She always cared for everyone with affection. Min commented that she was Seung-guk's agent, so it was natural to worry about him. But So-young felt she might be overdoing it. She brought food, fruit, and other things. Mi-young then asked if they weren't, in the end, a family, and reminded them that families needed to stick together. So-young admitted that. At that moment, Mingguk was was trying to steal Seung-guk's soup, which reminded So-young that, lately, the little one had been copying everything Seung-guk did. Mi-young thought that if he was imitating his older brother's behavior, maybe raising him wouldn't be so hard either. Seung-guk reflected on the past 2 months and concluded that taking care of a child was pure hell. The baby cried constantly, didn't let anyone sleep, and to make things worse, always started crying at the exact moment he went to the bathroom. Seung-guk thought that, in his past life, he had an extremely arrogant brother, and now he just hoped Min-guk would become at least a loyal brother. Or maybe a loyal servant, he thought, changing his mind mid-thought. But he quickly realized things were going in a very different direction. Seung-guk told himself that the jokes had gone far enough. He was tired. However, Min-guk's cuteness attack was stronger. He gave in and handed the bottle to the baby. Mi-young watched the scene and commented that it looked like a baby was taking care of another baby. But So-young explained that, in fact, the older brother was making everything much easier. Mi-young asked if So-young had thought about moving. Now that she had 2 children, and as the building owner, she admitted the place was a bit old and maybe too small to raise 2 kids. So-young said she didn't have the money to buy a better house. Mi-young then asked, what if they had the money? She whispered that SN Electronics had gotten in touch. They wanted Seung-guk to sing in a commercial for one of the brand's exclusive models. So-young was surprised by the news and wanted to know more about the product. Min explained that they had already sent a proposal and would soon show the contract. It needed to be discussed with Ji-seong, but it was a huge opportunity. Before making any decisions, though, everyone went to eat. After all, they still needed to return to filming the next season of Just Baby. Mi-young said she would send a car to pick them up, so there was no need to rush. However, the doorbell rang, and Mi-young wondered if it was already them. But it wasn't. It was Michael from the group Just. Seung-guk was confused by the visit. Michael was the one who had been arrested for betraying the Justice Group and teaming up with Shin. No one understood what he was doing there. Right behind him appeared Tai-hung, saying that maybe Michael had surprised them. In fact, they really wanted to see the 2 of them together again. It was clear that Michael was there to apologize. He admitted that everything had been his fault. Seung-guk wondered if a simple apology was enough to fix everything, but So-young thanked him for the apology. She said everyone had their reasons and hoped that from now on they could all get along. So-young and Mi-young thought the same thing at that moment. So-young was just too kind. So-young considered everything fine. Her parents had reacted calmly, but if Michael crossed the line again, that would be another story. That was when Ting said it was time to go. Everyone was waiting for Seung-guk's family. Later at the studio, Kwak was very happy to see his friend again. They hugged tightly. Kwak said that hug was because it had been a while since they saw each other, and he was emotional about it. In that moment, Seung-guk had a realization. He understood something important. He was born to work. He would live and die for his work. He stopped pretending and decided he needed to dedicate his life entirely to it. Kwak asked how the family and the new baby were. Min-guk was already about to cry. Kwak commented that he had gotten even cuter in the last 2 months, and he didn't even know how that was possible. Then Min-guk cried. He cried a lot. So-young explained that he always wanted to stay close to his brother. Seung-guk asked for help, begging for the filming to start soon. Kwak commented that a lot had changed over the past 2 months. With that, they decided to move quickly. There were exactly 20 episodes left until the end of the reality show. The final episode would likely air in September. The new season would begin with a picnic surrounded by cherry blossom trees. It was the spring episode, and everyone was dressed in themed costumes. Seung-guk shone as the star of the show. The assistant had already started recording while everyone enjoyed the cheerful atmosphere. Not far from there, inside a car, someone was discreetly watching the filming. It was Jae-hyung, the vice president of Samjeon. He wondered if he really needed to come all the way there just to watch in person, but even so, he couldn't help it. At that moment, he remembered the time he received the report. Jae-hyung had asked his secretary what exactly had happened with that other matter involving Shin, the exclusivity issue. The secretary explained that, as instructed, they had made it clear they wanted to sign the contract with the child, but the parents were hesitant because of everything that had happened. He asked if he should apply more pressure. Jae-hyung said no, to leave it as it was. What mattered most was the secretary's opinion of the contract. The secretary, speaking honestly, said he thought it was a bit too much for a child with so little experience and asked if that kid was really worth that much. Jae-hyung replied that there was something about that boy. He felt a kind of connection, as if it were a blood tie. Soon after, Jae-hyung stepped out of the car to meet the team on set. Seung-guk was confused, not understanding what his father, or rather ex-father, was doing there. He knew very well what kind of person Jae-hyung was. He had been born as the eldest son of the founder of the Samjeon Group, and had naturally been raised to be his successor. But his style was very different from his grandfather's. The grandfather wanted to build a kind of monarchy, saw himself as a conqueror. Jae-hyung, his son, was always driven solely by results. He didn't exploit or take risks. He only followed what he was sure tour would work. Everything had to bring returns, but always only for himself, never for his wife, the company, or his children. Taekook and Mijin had never lived up to his expectations and carried a strong inferiority complex. Seongguk had always been a genius, but even so, their relationship had never been good. Since he was little, he knew his father was a scumbag. In fact, without meaning to, Seongguk accidentally called him Dad in that moment. Jaehyung asked if he really didn't remember him, mentioning that washing machine commercial shoot, but Seongguk said he didn't know him. Jaehyung pressed, asking why he had called him Dad then. Seongguk replied that it was unintentional, but Jaehyung insisted he heard it clearly. That's when Kwak showed up, asking what brought Jaehyung there. He said he just wanted to see Seongguk for a moment, but ended up interrupting the filming. He explained that he only wanted to see Seongguk in person. He said that the spark in the boy's eyes reminded him of his own youth, and that only made him more certain. He asked if the parents had seen the contract. So Young replied that she had. Jaehyung then said they were ready to sign an exclusivity contract at any time. They just needed to say so and include any conditions they wanted. Seongguk muttered the word money, and So Young quickly told him to be quiet, but he was thinking internally that that was exactly what he wanted. Jaehyung laughed and said it was fine. He would give more money and that they could talk later when they were ready. After that, he left, while Seongguk reflected on how he never imagined seeing his father from his past life again. Now he was a child in a poor family, but he couldn't forget the past. In his previous life, his father had always trusted in the projects he created. After all, he had been his smartest child. Kwak then called everyone back to resume filming. Seongguk thought he needed to focus on his current life. With that, they began filming the special spring picnic episode. Days went by with the Children's Day special, the summer vacation special, and fans went wild over Just Baby. They showed up on set excited, wanting to talk to the members. So Young commented on how busy the day was, and the assistant asked how it was possible they always knew where the filming would happen. She replied that they were a national group after all. The assistant warned that they should be careful, as some fans were obsessively extreme. Seongguk had grown a lot during that time, and so had the group Just. Not that they weren't already popular, but they became the most beloved idols in all of Korea. The reality show Just Baby became even more famous. They released new songs, albums, and in the past 6 months, reached the top of the industry. Seongguk, of course, appeared in many commercials and became the most sought-after child name in the advertising world. He even heard from the director that they would be receiving a generous bonus. But unfortunately, the show was coming to an end. That would likely be their final filming. While walking across the set, someone suddenly grabbed Seongguk. It was Taehyung, who startled him but asked him to stay quiet. Seongguk asked what he needed. The assistant appeared and asked what they were doing since filming would start soon. Taehyung explained that he wanted Seongguk to choose the name of the group's next song. Later, this was documented on video. Kwak asked what was going on, and Taehyung said they were about to release a new album. The production was finished, but they couldn't decide on the title of the last track. That's why Taehyung had the idea to ask Seongguk's opinion. Kwak was surprised and said that Seongguk was very smart, but questioned whether such an important decision should really be left in the hands of a 3-year-old. Even so, Seongguk was there, listening carefully to the final track, seriously trying to think of a suitable name. Taehyung commented that at first, he also found it strange, but over the months, living with Seongguk had changed the way the group behaved. Growing up alongside a child had taught them all a lot. They wanted to include a mark from Seongguk on the next album as a way of honoring the time they had lived together before the group's separation. Later, Seongguk finished listening to the song, slowly took off his headphones, and knowing the future, chose that exact song. Lucas was a bit surprised by the choice, but Jaehyung commented that the boy had good taste. Kwak asked what kind of sound it was that he had chosen as the title track. Taehyung explained that it was a song in which Jae-won himself had participated in the production. Among the 3 songs Seongguk listened to in order to decide, that one had the most unique style. Everyone except Jaehyung and Beomseon thought the song wasn't that important, but it ended up being chosen as the main track of the album. All thanks to Seongguk, who knew it would become the greatest of all. He knew its potential because of his past life. That song would in fact reach #1 on the top 10 most streamed songs for 5 consecutive weeks, and if it were used as the album's title, it would become even more famous. Lucas tried to insist that he reconsider, telling him several times to think it over. But Seongguk stood firm and said it had to be that one. Taehyung agreed, and said that if he chose it, then that would be the main track. Later, So-young took Seong-guk to an extremely suspicious place. She suspected that the boys from Just, near the end of the show, were planning something very secret. In reality, it was a surprise birthday party. Everyone was gathered singing happy birthday, and of course, Seong-guk was very happy about it. He hadn't expected to enjoy it so much, but the celebration truly touched him. Kwok said that the Korean food station had prepared everything especially for him. He could eat as much as he wanted as a thank you for the great work he had done. Everyone eagerly dug into the food. So-young was moved by all of it. Even Secretary Yang, sent by Jae-hyung, showed up to deliver a special gift. He said it was a small token personally chosen by Jae-hyung himself. It was an entire box of pure gynium, a very expensive medicinal plant. That kind of high-quality, pure imported jincheneng from Korea could cost over 2,000 ries per kilo. The secretary asked her to review the contract when she had time. So-young replied that she would visit as soon as possible. When autumn arrived and the leaves began to fall, Mi-young asked So-young if she wasn't tired. Taking care of babies couldn't be easy, but she replied not so much. She said she liked walking and asked Seong-guk if he wasn't exhausted. He thought that there was no room for tiredness. He needed to stay alert at all times, especially now, trying to understand what his former father's true intentions were. Later, they were at the main building of Samjeon Industries, where the vice president awaited them on a luxurious balcony. Jae-hyung commented that it had been a while since he last saw Seong-guk. Secretary Yang served very expensive tea and cookies. When Seong-guk tasted them, he realized they were exactly his favorite cookies from his past life and began eating enthusiastically. During the meeting, Jae-young asked if Mi-young had reviewed the contract terms. She replied yes, and that it was a very generous offer. It was hard to believe that a 3-year exclusivity contract would offer a bonus of 150 million won. Upon hearing this, Seong-guk choked and spit out the cookie. He knew it was a good offer, but hadn't expected anything of that magnitude. The terms were extremely favorable. He thought that this type of contract was reserved for the top celebrities in the industry, and he wondered, confused, what the hell was Jae-hyung thinking? Mi-young, being honest, said she didn't understand the reason for such a high offer. Jae-hyung replied that it was an investment. The secretary then handed over a pamphlet with information about Samjeon's educational program, which provided all kinds of support for talent development. According to him, the vice president himself believed that Seong-guk was more than deserving of all those benefits. So-young commented that he really was intelligent, but Jae-hyung went further and said that in his eyes, he saw someone very special. He said Seong-guk was brave, intelligent, and that with the right support, he could exceed any expectations and become a great man in the future. Seong-guk replied that he accepted. He thought that, as always, his father from his past life was still obsessed with results. In that life too, he used to find talent and shape it, and his judgment was right. Seong-guk was going to become the greatest talent. He would become a great businessman. He told himself he would be the best. Jae-hyung praised the spirit he showed, something not even his own children had. That's why he wanted to offer even more support. They were going to improve the contract terms, but he asked the mother and agent to think it through calmly. He guaranteed that the agreement would bring only benefits for Seong-guk. Back home, So-young was tired as she put the children to sleep. She asked her husband what he thought about all of it. Ji-seong replied that the contract was truly amazing. He said that 150 million was a number he had never even seen written down before, but So-young sincerely confessed that she was scared about everything. A man as powerful and impressive as that, noticing Seong-guk in that way, made So-young uneasy. She was afraid that something might go wrong, just like last time when the rumors spread everywhere. She didn't know if accepting that contract so quickly was really the best choice, but Seong-guk, who was listening from behind the door, thought that, of course, she was right. The two of them had never even managed to save a million won. Imagine then 150 million. A contract of that level was naturally terrifying. It was as if they had spent their entire lives trapped inside a jar, and now they were trying to jump out of it. Growing up poor in any country made people grow up afraid of big opportunities, especially when a lot of money was involved. Seong-guk knew that most humble people felt discouraged when faced with something like that, but even so, he intended to convince them little by little. However, Ji-seong ended up surprising his son. He said they could go ahead and accept the contract. He explained that it was important to think carefully, because with this agreement, Seong-guk could have a life completely different from theirs. He wouldn't need to live the way they had, facing hunger, orphanages, and hardship. He would have a good education, a successful career, and could reach a life as impressive as the vice president of Samjeon himself. And with that, they too could start over. Seong-guk heard that and thought his father was right. Ji-seong said he wanted to grab that opportunity with all his strength. So the next morning, Secretary Yang showed up, thanking them for the quick response. He said the vice president was very pleased with the decision. However, he informed them that the contract terms had been adjusted. The exclusivity period was reduced from 3 to 2 years, and because of that, the bonus had also changed from 150 million to a still impressive 100 million won. Even so, it was a lot of money. But the secretary explained that before signing, they wanted to suggest a few changes on their end as well. He asked if everything was okay. Everyone became a little tense, so Young asked what exactly they wanted to change. The secretary said there were 2 important things to mention first. But before he could continue, Seong-guk simply grabbed the contract from his hands. The secretary tried to argue that this kind of document should be reviewed by adults, but Seong-guk asked if it involved shares and apartments, trying to understand everything. The secretary grew nervous with his attitude. Seong-guk thought he looked frustrated. He had been acting like a child all this time, even though his mind was much more mature. So Young was surprised and asked since when he knew how to read. The secretary, in turn, was amazed. He thought that boy was truly incredible. At only 3 years old, he had learned to read on his own. He concluded that the vice president was right. That boy was a true genius, worthy of all investment. Then he began to explain calmly. He said the bonus had been reduced from 150 million to 100 million, but as a gesture of appreciation, the company would place shares worth an additional 50 million in Seong-guk's name. So Young was shocked, and the secretary went on. He said that Samjeon was building a new luxury residential complex in Jamsil, and that one of the apartments would be given to the family as part of the deal. So Young thought all of it was excessive, but Seong-guk stayed focused. He was searching for a loophole in the contract. He believed there had to be some hidden detail, and he found it. It was a mandatory service clause. If the 2-year work period was not fulfilled, all the shares would have to be returned immediately, and the taxes on that return would be the beneficiary's responsibility. Seong-guk thought that, of course, his father from the past life had planned everything. He always created strategies like that, presenting an offer full of benefits to tempt the person, but only delivering everything once he believed the person deserved it or could fulfill their part. Seong-guk thought it was like dangling a handful of candy right in front of him. He already knew that style well from his old father. Seonmi said everything was fine, that they could give him everything, but So Young didn't agree. Even so, Suk said firmly that he wanted to sign the contract. He believed Samjeon Electronics would grow a lot in the future, so that contract needed to be signed. Even Mi-young disagreed with So Young, saying that this was a great opportunity for the girl and for her family. Mi-young thanked the secretary for the good conditions offered, but she thought it was too much responsibility for one person. That's why she proposed that the contract be signed company to company, by creating a new company dedicated exclusively to managing Seong-guk. Everyone was considering opening their own agency, and the secretary was impressed by the idea. He said it was a great proposal. Seong-guk thought it was amazing too. He imagined many contracts could come in the future, and that this would be the first company registered under his name. When he heard Mi-young's idea, he was impressed, but in his mind, he was already imagining something even bigger. That would be the seed of the global-level company he would one day create. The secretary said they would give all the necessary support for the new agency, and said he looked forward to working well with them. Seong-guk then signed the contract with his little baby fingerprint and was very happy about it. Later, they explained everything to his father, who was at work. They told him that was how the contract had been finalized. Ji-seong said it was a lot to read, with shares, apartments, and many impressive details. He was surprised to learn that his son could read all of that, and said the boy was truly a genius. He said he was very proud of his little son. That night, dinner was a real banquet. Expensive, high-quality food. So Young said she hadn't spent that much, but that every now and then, it was good to treat yourself. She even gave a bit more food to Mingo, since it would be the first time he'd try meat. When he tasted it, he loved it. Seong-guk approved too, and said he was going to start eating right away. Meanwhile, So Young asked Ji-seong if he had talked to his boss. Ji-seong said yes, that he had told his boss he wanted to start something of his own. The boss thought it was time for him to gain independence, and suggested he open his own store. Ji-seong commented that, thanks to Seong-guk, they now had good capital, and he planned to save up in order to open his own commercial space in the future. His boss also offered to teach him how to manage that kind of business. So Young thought it was great, and Ji-seong repeated that it was all thanks to his son, because his dream was starting to come true. Meanwhile, Seonmi asked Secretary Yang what exactly had happened with Seong-guk. She said she was just curious, but in truth, she was betraying the vice president and passing all the information to Shin from Sinsung Entertainment, who had recently been released from prison and looked visibly worn out. Shin was furious with the people at Samjeon, saying they had crossed the line with him. He declared that he would put everyone back in their place and began planning to form a group to go after those who dared oppose him. But Seonmi didn't think it was a good idea. She said Seong-guk was no longer the same and questioned whether Shin would really dare touch the property of the Samjeon vice president. president, which didn't seem wise. She assessed that, based on the contract, the vice president had high expectations for the boy. If something serious happened to him, Ji-seong could take drastic action. Even so, Shin told her to leave the room because he would start handling things his way. Xiaomi thought the company's CEO didn't understand the situation. She was no longer the same Seon-mi from 7 years ago, especially since her contract had already ended. At Seong-guk's home, the atmosphere was pure luxury. They were even doing an at-home spa. Ever since he signed the exclusivity contract, his life had changed a lot. Mi-young had taken charge of business matters, and the new agency had started receiving many requests. After a serious family discussion, they decided to open a fried pork restaurant near Ji-seong's apartment. He was working hard to learn the old boss's secret recipe. Even so, taking care of Min-guk was still tough, and that's why he was getting a facial treatment. He was stressed with the new routine, and that bit of care brought some relief. In his past life, he always did these kinds of sessions, but he liked this one even more because it was his mother who was doing it. Suddenly, breaking news appeared on TV. They were announcing the most listened-to song in Korea at that moment. As expected, Seong-guk saw it was the same as always. The song It's a Lie was in its 10th consecutive week at #1. He was pleased, thinking they were doing very well, and mentally commented that hopefully one day they would repay that debt to him. Without warning, a mysterious visitor arrived at the house, wearing a hood and sunglasses. The person ran straight to Seong-guk, saying he was adorable. So-young found it strange, and asked who that woman was and why she had come in like that. Seon-mi apologized, explaining that the disguise was still on her face. Seong-guk hadn't expected the visit either. Later, Seon-mi was being served tea. So-young wanted to know the reason for the visit. Seon-mi said she had been waiting for the opportunity to apologize. She said they had gone through a lot because of her, and that if she hadn't recommended the group to Sinsung Entertainment, none of that would have happened. Seong-guk thought that even in his past life, the relationship between Shin and Seon-mi had always been close in business, but nothing beyond that. It was just business interests, nothing more, nothing less. However, he always knew that Seon-mi was like a fox, someone who showed one face to his father and acted completely differently behind his back. Still, Seong-guk believed that at that moment, it was better to have people owe him favors than turn everything into hostility. So he decided to end the matter right there, saying that the apologies were enough. Seon-mi asked if he was really accepting it. So-young then commented that the mere fact that Seon-mi, being such a busy actress, had come all the way there already meant a lot to everyone. She sincerely thanked her for the support she showed towards Seong-guk, and Seon-mi said that from that moment on, they would all be closer. Seong-guk, suspicious, wondered if she was only saying that because of Shin, but Seon-mi, noticing, replied lightly, saying that he was already speaking so well and had grown a lot. It was true. She hadn't come just to apologize. There was more. She also brought something important, a document from Sam Jaeon, but before handing it over, she wanted to make it clear that she had already made her decision. So, Young asked how Seon-mi knew about the news and why she also wanted to join the agency. Seon-mi explained that she had begged the secretary to tell her and revealed that her exclusivity contract with Shin had ended. She confessed that she had been very disappointed with everything that had happened and said it no longer made sense to return to Sinsung Entertainment. Now, she wanted to work with actors who truly cared about family. That's why she approached So-young and asked if this wasn't a good opportunity for everyone. She was very famous, had plenty of money, and could help establish the new agency. Seon-mi thought that if she managed to find an opening at that moment, everything would move more easily the way she wanted. She was already ready to sign the contract next to So-young, but Seong-guk immediately refused, saying never, not ever. Seon-mi asked why, but he only answered that he didn't really know. He just knew he didn't want to. So Young said he had been in a bad mood lately and suggested that Seon-mi discuss the details later with her and Mi-young. But Seong-guk started shouting no, 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 having one of his strongest child tantrums ever. So Young was shocked because he had never done that before. Hearing his brother Min-guk also started crying and screaming loudly. Of course, So-young went to comfort him. Meanwhile, Seon-mi, trying to get closer, asked why Seong-guk didn't like her. When she tried to touch his cheek, she got slapped. Seong-guk thought her motives were obvious. Seon-mi never did anything that could hurt her in any way. She was approaching him and the agency out of interest in their future value, treating them as an investment. But that alone wasn't enough for him to accept her in the company. One day, the agency would be full of people he trusted, and he didn't want someone like her around, especially a fox like her. Seong-guk reinforced once again that he didn't want her there. At that moment, So-young returned with Min-guk, still crying and apologizing for the mess. Seon-mi suddenly said she would leave for the day. She said she would like to join the agency and talk more about it in the future, but for now she would show a bit of sincerity. Then she handed over the Samjeon documents, saying she would leave them right there on the floor. She left wearing her disguise, sunglasses and a beanie. Seong-guk thought it wasn't about failing to recognize her value, but rather about wanting people who took the agency seriously. He didn't want people who just passed through without commitment. So Young, irritated, asked what kind of horrible thing her son had done. She said he needed to learn how to behave in front of guests and wanted to know why he was throwing a tantrum in front of adults. Seong-guk replied that they should look at the documents because that was more important. When So Young picked up the paper, she was shocked. It was a commercial shoot request for the exclusive model Jeon Seong-guk related to the new product from Samjeon Electronics, with a launch planned for next spring. Later on set, the one who welcomed the group was director Kwak. Everyone was happy to see So Young there. She commented that Samjeon really knew how to pick its directors. Kwak said that Mingguk had grown a lot, and that Seong-guk looked even more amazing. He was wearing clothes provided by the event's sponsor, a famous brand called Petit Cochon, which means little pig in French. Seong-guk felt a bit offended by that. Jae-young was also present on set, watching everything closely. Beside him, a man commented that this was the child he had supported so eagerly. That man was none other than the founder of Samjeon and Jae-hyung's father. Of course, Jae-hyung treated his father with great care, but the old man interrupted, saying not to treat him like an elder. Just because he had appeared sick in the media didn't mean he was actually ill. The founder said he had also seen the proposal his son made for the boy. He said that Jae-hyung was preparing a loud commercial centered on that child and wanted to know what exactly his son was thinking. Until then, Samjeon always filmed advertisements with dignity and class. Jae-hyung replied that change was necessary. This was the new trend in advertising, and it was time for the company to let go of its old and rigid image. The old man asked if his son thought his methods were outdated. Jae-hyung hesitated and said that wasn't exactly it. Still, the father said he could do as he pleased. The Samjeon founder, observing his son's confidence, commented that he seemed to know what he was doing. Then he asked about the child, wanting to understand why Jae-hyung was putting so much effort into him. Jae-hyung replied that it was an investment for the future, but his father wanted to know what kind of return such a child could bring. At that moment, Jae-hyung remembered his conversation with Seon-mi, when she also tried to join his agency as if it were an investment. She had said that old commercials were outdated and that nowadays success came from appearing close to the public, friendly, and accessible. According to her, that was why Seong-guk was the best child actor of the moment. No one could match his image in the market. It was, in fact, a valuable investment opportunity. The father was impressed. He commented that Jeon Seong-guk, at that age, could already read, while it had taken Jae-hyung 5 years to learn. He said that if only that child were part of their family. None of his grandchildren at the moment met Samjeon's standards, and Jae-hyung agreed, finding it all very disappointing. They talked so much about Seong-guk that he himself felt a little pain in his ear. While reading the script, he realized the commercial was for a new vacuum cleaner by Samjeon. Analyzing the technical sheet and the script, he was sure that this ad would determine the direction of the company's business, and thought that if he did it well, his value would increase even more. Suddenly, the group just appeared, and everyone started talking to Seong-guk at once. Taehyung ran to So Young, saying she looked even more beautiful, which made not only Seong-guk but also Mingguk completely annoyed. Taehyung asked how Seong-guk was doing, and he replied that he was fine. He thought the group looked great too. They were shining even more, and not just metaphorically, they were literally shining. The group said they were doing really well thanks to Seong-guk. The title song, which he had personally chosen, had been at the top of the charts for 30 weeks. Because of him, the group had become the most famous in Korea. Seong-guk thought, of course it worked. He had been involved. But then he asked if they were planning to pay him back. No one answered until Taehyung picked him up and said of course they would. He just had to say what he needed. Kwak, seeing that everyone was present, announced that they could begin filming. Later, inside the studio, Taehyung was praising the setup, while the assistant was calling Baeomseon and Jae-hyung. At that moment, Seong-guk asked where Michael was. The group just looked visibly nervous upon hearing the question. Taehyung replied that Michael had kind of left the group. Seong-guk was surprised and wanted to know what had happened. Taehyung explained that they didn't kick him out. It was his own decision. After everything that happened, when he got out of prison, Michael became strange. One day he said he missed his family and went back to Los Angeles without giving anyone a chance to talk to him before that. Seong-guk realized at that moment that he had changed the future. In his past life, Michael also got involved in scandals, but stayed in just until the end. After committing several crimes, he retired and vanished. All of that was happening again, except for one thing. In this life, he had skipped a stage. He became famous much earlier thanks to the new song, and because he had met Seong-guk. It was Seong-guk who changed the future. That made him extremely nervous. He started to wonder what else might have changed because of him. While he was thinking about about that, Beom-seon and Jae-hyung were having an argument, but it was just a silly little fight. Beom-seon was saying that Jae-hyung didn't know how to act. Trying to prove otherwise, Jae-hyung did a forced scene with the vacuum cleaner from the commercial, but it turned out so bad that no one liked it. Literally no one. Seong-guk thought this might be a problem. Jae-hyung was a pure idol, passionate about performing, charismatic, loved for his personality. But when it came to acting, his performance was forced. Beom-seon, on the other hand, was the opposite. As an idol, he didn't stand out, but as an actor, he was excellent. Seong-guk commented that it would be better to let Beom-seon try the scene. Jae-hyung agreed and said they could give it a shot. Beom-seon said he would take the test. Seong-guk thought he needed to show his talent as an actor, and indeed, he performed extremely well. Even Jae-hyung was impressed by Beom-seon's performance. The assistant said he would never have expected that from someone so quiet, but he was really good at acting. Beom-seon replied that he had once been interested in acting, and the assistant suggested that maybe he could take the role if Jae-hyung didn't mind. But to everyone's surprise, Jae-hyung complimented him, saying Beom-seon had been incredible. Seong-guk knew that Jae-hyung wasn't the type of person full of ego. Jae-hyung even said it would be better for Beom-seon to continue with that part of the role because he himself wouldn't have done it as well. Seong-guk thought that now everything would start to work out properly and wondered if this too was his doing. In his past life, Jae-hyung and Beom-seon began solo activities and separated from the group. Rumors said they remained apart until retirement, but now the two of them were very close. Seong-guk realized he shouldn't place so much importance on his past life anymore. Things were different now, and he had to move forward. He felt like he could do anything. Filming continued into the night. Seong-guk returned home exhausted. He had many lines that day, and all he wanted was to fall into bed and sleep. But just when he least expected it, Seon-mi appeared once again. Seong-guk thought that Fox was trying to get close to them again. But Seon-mi said she wanted to take them to a comfortable place where they could relax. When they arrived, Seong-guk was shocked. It was the same restaurant he used to go to in his past life, where he ate to soothe his soul. The best black bean sauce noodle restaurant. He could hardly believe he was standing in front of that glorious dish again. In his past life, he went there whenever he was stressed or wanted to celebrate something. But in this life, he thought he would never get the chance to go back. So he didn't hesitate and dug in. So Young commented that the dishes looked expensive, but Seon-mi replied that she just wanted to show her sincerity towards Seong-guk. She also said they had taken action against Shin. Even after negatively influencing the boy, he felt no remorse. He even dared to spread malicious rumors about Seong-guk and the vice president of Samjeon. So they decided to teach him a lesson. Seong-guk wondered if that was really what had happened. Mi-young was impressed to see that he had already eaten everything. Seong-guk said the food was really good and invited Seon-mi to join them. This time he was okay with it. Seon-mi asked if he was finally accepting her. Seong-guk thought it wasn't because of the food. In truth, he had confirmed that the future could change. Maybe Seon-mi really was a better person than he thought. In the process of making his agency a solid company, she could be a powerful ally. Seon-mi promised to work hard for the agency, and So-young said she would need to discuss it with her husband once they got home. Later, Ji-seong said he understood everything but was still a bit against the idea. According to him, they called it an agency, but there was no office, no staff. How could they handle both Seong-guk and Seon-mi at the same time with no structure? Seong-guk silently agreed. He admitted that Ji-seong's reasoning was smart. At that moment, the only person running the agency was Mi-young, and she would have to handle everything alone. Even with his help, it would be extremely difficult. First, they needed funding to build a team and proper infrastructure. That's when Seong-guk had a brilliant idea. He ran off and came back with a book for his mother. The title was Basic Principles of Accounting and Financial Structuring. So-young was surprised and asked if that book really belonged to him. Seong-guk replied that she had never mentioned it, but she had a degree in the field and had written that book. Mi-young asked if it was true. So-young explained that she graduated from a commercial high school and had worked in accounting for a while. She had even thought of returning to the field someday. With conviction, Seong-guk said yes, she could do it. Seong-guk was deeply moved by his mother's support. He thought that even if it wasn't a large company, she could still gain valuable experience along the way. Deep down, experience wasn't even the most important thing. What truly mattered, especially in accounting, was trust. That's why he believed his mother was the perfect hire. Mi-young agreed with him, saying it made sense for them to try. After all, she had heard Ji-seong mention several times that his mother wanted to return to work. He was also supporting the decision, and So-young assured them she would do her best. Seong-guk thought that with his mother involved, they could definitely move forward. It was clear she believed in his talent. Thanks to her, his money was safe now. Mi-young mentioned that she already had a place prepared to be the new company's office. The building belonged to her, so they didn't need to worry about rent. She wanted to be part of all of it, and for that reason, she was offering the space. Seong-guk thought that this was exactly how it should be. She was part of the family, and it was good that she felt included. That moment marked the official beginning of the Samjeon agency. The next morning, Seonmi showed up with a watermelon in her hands. She had heard the office was opening that day and came to visit. Upon arrival, she noticed several office supplies piled up outside. So Young explained that it wasn't that much. Upstairs, there were only 2 desks set up. The space was small and very simple. They even felt a little embarrassed to show her everything. But Seonmi told them not to worry. The most important thing was having a functional office. A huge space that serves no purpose has no value. People like Shin were the ones who acted like that, more concerned with appearances than usefulness. Seonmi took the moment to show them a newspaper article. It featured a story saying that the lead actress, Seonmi, had switched agencies and was now exclusively signed with Samjeon, the same agency as child actor Seong-guk. So Young was surprised and asked if the article had really come out. Seonmi confirmed it had and said she was now officially tied to them. Then she asked where Seong-guk was. He was inside, teaching his little brother Minguk. He was reading him a story, even though he didn't feel very comfortable doing that. Seonmi thought it was very sweet and commented on the fairy tale. Meanwhile, Minguk began crawling back and forth. So Young explained that had started recently because Minguk always tried to stick close to his brother. That's why Seong-guk spent most of his time taking care of him. Seonmi said that it was working very well and that if Minguk was growing so much around them, maybe he could even join the group someday. Seong-guk, confused, wondered what she meant. That's when Seonmi explained that the vice president of Samjeon, Jae-hyung, would be throwing a birthday party for his 10-year-old son, Jeon Tae-guk. She said it would be on July 8th at one of the Samjeon hotels. Seong-guk was surprised. A birthday party for that boy? In his past life, he never helped him with anything. He wondered if he was really going to meet that brat again, but now he had a real brother by his side, Minguk. They were nothing alike. Seong-guk thought Minguk should follow in his footsteps, but maybe he was following a bit too much. Then he remembered the date, July 8th. He felt something strange in the back of his mind, like a sharp sting. In the middle of the night, while everyone was asleep, the phone rang. So Young woke up startled and answered it, not knowing what was happening. It was Secretary Yang, calling at an odd hour. She asked if it was about the party, and he said yes, that it had been postponed indefinitely. He asked them to turn on the TV and check the news. When Seong-guk turned it on, he saw reporters saying that the government had assembled urgently, preparing for the chaos ahead. That was when he remembered what had caused the sting. On July 8th, the supreme leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Hee Nung, had died. The journalist continued, announcing that the president of North Korea, Kim So-young, had passed away. According to initial reports, the cause of death was a heart attack. It was a sudden and unexpected loss. The South Korean government, which was on the verge of signing a peace agreement with the North, was deeply shaken. Fearing that war between the Koreas could restart, the United States, China, and Japan also entered a state of alert. The leader's death caused internal conflict in North Korea, and although some saw it as an opportunity for reunification, the reality was very different. Chaos took over both Korea's and the international stage. Naturally, Jeon Tae-guk's birthday party was canceled. Ji-seong commented that even the stock market had collapsed. Seong-guk, surprised, asked if it was true. Ji-seong explained that he had been studying the stock market because of advice from the vice president of Samjeon, who had encouraged him to do so. Even So Young was impressed. Seong-guk said they needed to buy stocks immediately, insisting it was the right moment. He thought that with Kim Jong's death, the Kospi index would also crash. For those unfamiliar, Kospi is like South Korea's stock exchange. People were terrified about the possibility of a new war and started selling their stocks to get quick cash. That's why Seong-guk knew it was the best time to buy. When the market is panicking, that's when the best opportunities appear. Ji-seong was confused and wondered what was wrong with that child. Seong-guk, determined, kept saying they needed to buy those stocks and said that if no one did it, he wouldn't eat today, tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow. So Young, worried, asked her husband what they should do. Ji-seong, trying to defuse the situation, said that sometimes kids throw tantrums for no reason, and that he would pretend to buy some stocks just to calm him down. But Seong-guk stared at him with a serious and piercing look, making it clear he wasn't a fool. He demanded to be taken seriously. Ji-seong then remarked that the child was extremely perceptive, so Young suggested that they actually buy some stocks as an early birthday present for him. Seong-guk thought that would be enough. He knew that when the values went up, everyone would regret not buying more. But even so, it was a start. He also knew that major events were coming. He wasn't sure how much he could influence the future, but one thing was certain. This was his family now, and he would do everything to protect them. A few days later, everyone arrived at the Samjeon Hotel for Jeon Tae-guk's birthday party. The place was extremely luxurious, with sophisticated guests. So Young commented on how impressive everything was. Mi-young said it was unbelievable that they did all that for a 10-year-old boy. It was, without a doubt, a completely different world from theirs. But as Seong-guk observed the surroundings, he thought that this party was nothing. His own 10th birthday party in his past life had been far more extravagant. In fact, the decorations at this event even seemed modest. As they walked in and past the guests, all that could be heard were people commenting on the death of the North Korean leader, the rising tensions between countries, and the risk of war. The international situation dominated all conversations. At that moment, Secretary Yang appeared to welcome them. He said he had been waiting for them since he heard they were coming. He also introduced his son, Yang Cheol-soo. When Seong-guk saw him, he immediately remembered his past life because he had been responsible for taking care of that boy. Cheol-soo, excited, pulled Seong-guk into the party, wanting to play. So-young commented that it was great for Cheol-soo to have a big brother figure like Seong-guk around. She thought that kind of relationship would be healthy for both of them. Seong-guk also thought that in his past life Cheol-soo had been a good kid and even liked him, but as he walked through the ballroom, he saw a girl passing by and recognized her immediately. It was Jung-hee. Cheol-soo asked if he knew the girl. Seong-guk, surprised, tried to play it off, saying maybe he had seen her around before, but deep down, he knew exactly who she was. Jung-hee had been his first love in his past life. In fact, she was the only woman he had truly loved. He even thought about marrying her. However, when her family's steel company, Seum, went bankrupt during the economic crisis at the time, Jung-hee accepted a marriage proposal from Seong-guk's father. She ended their relationship by saying that if she did this, his father would help save her family's company. Back then, Seong-guk felt betrayed for money. He began to hate her, and from that point on, he never got involved with another woman. However, now he understood. Jung-hee also wanted to protect her family. He thought that, in truth, the real villain in that story had been the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which acts like a kind of United Nations for money, promoting trade and growth among member countries. But Seong-guk interrupted those thoughts when something unexpected happened. While walking, someone deliberately stuck out a foot and made him fall to the ground. When he got up and looked at who had done it, he recognized him immediately. It was Jeon Tae-guk, the bastard brother from his past life. Jeon Tae-guk arrogantly said that this was the kid their father loved so much, but he didn't see anything special in him. Before he could say anything else, Seong-guk punched Jeon Tae-guk so hard in the face that he almost knocked him out, even though he was only a 3-year-old child. Everyone was shocked. So-young, frightened, asked what her son was doing, but Seong-guk responded that he only retaliated because he had been provoked. Secretary Yang wanted to know if it was true that Jeon Tae-guk had done that. Cheol-soo, who was nearby and saw everything, confirmed that yes, Jeon Tae-guk had tripped him on purpose. Even so, So-young scolded her son, saying it wasn't right to behave like that at a party, especially in public. But Seong-guk thought that he knew that boy very well. He had been his brother in another life and knew exactly what kind of person he was. He knew Tae-guk would never stop this kind of behavior unless he learned the hard way. He was ready to face him. Secretary Yang then looked at Jeon Tae-guk and told him he better stop. It was his fault, and if he caused another scene like that, the vice president wouldn't like it at all. Tae-guk became visibly nervous at the mention of his father's name. He felt more fear than respect for Jae-young. At that moment, So-young approached Tae-guk, trying to comfort him, asking if he was hurt. But the boy seemed more shaken for another reason. He asked anxiously when his mother would arrive. The secretary replied that she had said she had some commitments but would arrive soon. He asked him to enjoy his party. Still, Tae-guk was very sad. He said it was always like that. Even on his own birthday, his mother was never present. He started crying hard, and Secretary Yang had to comfort him, trying to calm him down. So-young found the situation strange. It was odd to see a child sitting alone on their own birthday. Mi-young commented that she didn't even want to imagine what that family's life was like. It seemed very dysfunctional. Seong-guk thought that it truly wasn't a good family. He knew that very well. In his past life, Min-guk's mother, who was also his own mother, was always taking care of her husband, a famous politician. Meanwhile, Jae-young cheated on her with multiple lovers and never cared about birthdays or the well-being of his son. Back then, Seong-guk also didn't care much if people came to his parties. He just enjoyed the celebration however he could. Most of the time, he spent his birthdays greeting politicians and spoiled elite kids. But Tae-guk was really shaken, and Seong-guk began to feel a bit sorry for him. The secretary tried to change the atmosphere, took the microphone, and thanked everyone for coming to the party. He asked the waiters to start serving the food. Seong-guk got excited when he saw they would serve a type of pasta he loved. The secretary also announced there would be a special performance by the group just that evening. Seong-guk was impressed, even though he already knew the Samjeon group liked just a lot, and that So-young was a fan. She looked very excited about the news. He wondered if that was the kind of girl she was in this life. During the performance, performance, Taehyung, one of the group members, winked at Seong-guk. His mother, So Young, thought the wink was meant for her, but Seong-guk didn't like it at all. Still, he acknowledged that Secretary Yang was really impressive. He managed to turn that heavy atmosphere into something more pleasant. But even with the party going on, Seong-guk couldn't stop thinking about Tae-guk, who was still crying alone. He wondered what that boy's parents were doing, since they still hadn't shown up. That's when Vice President Jae-hyung and the Madame finally arrived at the party. As expected, everyone wanted to talk to them. They were the most important guests of the night. Jae-hyung greeted Seong-guk with a smile and said he was happy to see him there. The Madame, who had been Seong-guk's mother in his past life, looked at him and said she even found him cute, but quickly turned her back on him. Cold as always. It was no surprise that her nickname was Iron Madame. Tae-guk was very happy to see her, but she didn't show the same joy. So Young commented that, with everyone gathered, they even looked like a happy family. But Seong-guk thought his mother shouldn't have said that. This was far from being a real family. The relationship between them was terrible. The father cheated on the mother. The mother cheated on the father. No one cared about the child. And there was no love at all. They were all just obsessed with money and status. But now Seong-guk had a new family, one that was loving and genuine. With these people by his side, he felt like he could achieve anything. He knew his current family was destined to go straight to the top. A long time passed after that. In the summer of 1995, Seong-guk, now 5 years old, was hospitalized in serious condition, unconscious for a long time. To understand what happened, we go back to the beginning of that summer. Seong-guk's family was moving. Ji-seong expressed his gratitude, amazed at how fast everything happened. The head of the moving team explained that Samjeon had made sure to give top priority to their move. Before leaving, the team leader asked for a moment. Seong-guk came out to say goodbye. Even at 5 years old, he was incredibly cute. The boss, moved, said that he and his family had been fans of the boy for a long time. He handed him a handmade teddy bear from his wife, and Seong-guk thanked him sincerely. The worker said that moment was a dream come true for his boss. So Young asked if everything was all right, and Ji-seong confirmed it was. From that day on, they would start a new life in a new house. Everything was brand new and very clean. So Young could barely believe that this was really their home. Ji-seong commented that the vice president of Samjeon was truly generous. Even so, Seong-guk didn't like Jae-hyung very much for obvious reasons. In the end, they were only getting what they were owed. In exchange for becoming Samjeon's exclusive child model, the contract granted them company shares and a brand new apartment in Jamsil. Even before the official end of the contract, they had already received the keys to the new home. As soon as construction was finished, the family moved in immediately. Seong-guk knew very well what the vice president was planning. It was the so-called image project for the new generation of Samjeon. At that time, Samjeon Electronics had surpassed all other competitors, becoming by far the most beloved company in the entire country. Of course, Samjeon's ability to create new products played a key role in that success. But Seong-guk also knew he himself had played an important part. Even Jeonju Shin, a major figure in the group, had acknowledged the value he brought to the campaign. Seong-guk thought he deserved more for that. In fact, he felt he should even receive a bonus. Meanwhile, Ji-seong casually asked what they should do that day. The TV was already on a financial news channel, and Seong-guk immediately understood what his father meant. He said they should buy more Samjeon Electronics stocks, of course. Ji-seong noted that those stocks had actually dropped a little in recent days. Seong-guk thought it was due to the current wave of global economic cold, which he considered stupid, and concluded that his father focused too much on the short term and not enough on the long term. To him, it was clear that Samjeon's stocks would multiply significantly in the future, especially with the new technological inventions that were on the way. That's why he insisted they should still buy more. Ji-seong, intrigued, asked if that was his son's instinct speaking, and Seong-guk replied that it was. Then Ji-seong said that was exactly what they needed to do. Seong-guk thought that, deep down, his father had become his stock manager. When he saw the results of their first purchase together, he was stunned. The stock value had increased tenfold. That sparked even more of Ji-seong's interest in investments. Since then, almost every day, he had been studying stocks with his son. These days, Ji-seong truly believed his son had a real instinct for investment, because everything he had suggested so far had worked. Seong-guk even found his father's simplicity amusing, as it made everything easier. He asked if his father wasn't buying too many stocks, as if he were becoming greedy. But Ji-seong denied it and said that saving money was always a good idea. Besides, he was saving up to one day give Seong-guk's mother a proper wedding. He asked his son not to tell her anything. Seong-guk promised to keep it a secret and said he would do everything to support his father's plan. Ji-seong smiled proudly, saying that was his boy. At that moment, Minguk, 3 years old, woke up with sleepy eyes and asked his brother to read him a book. Since their mother was busy, Seong-guk had no choice but to make the sacrifice. This time, the book he brought was Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. When Ji-seong heard that, he was shocked and asked if that was really what his son was reading to a 3-year-old. But Seong-guk thought that lately he had been personally teaching little Minguk everything. He was giving him the highest level of education possible: humanity, economics, and even foreign languages. He believed Minguk had a lot of potential, unlike Taeguk, and he wanted to turn Minguk into a competent subordinate in the future. Meanwhile, So-young answered the phone. It was manager Mi-young, calling about an interview and some new decisions involving the agency. Seong-guk thought the Samjeon agency had been doing very well lately, and appointing Mi-young as general manager had been an excellent decision. So-young was informed of a new event. A new Samjeon department store was about to open, and the vice president would be present. Even though Seong-guk didn't feel like seeing that man again, he knew they had to go. At the same time, a symbolic scene appeared that might represent Seong-guk's fate. The ceiling of the venue was cracked, like a warning that something was wrong. The next morning, the family met with Mi-young. So-young said she didn't need to worry so much about the events, as it was Seong-guk's responsibility. But Mi-young explained that she was also involved in Samjeon as his manager, so it was natural for her to handle it. Soon after, Seong-guk appeared wearing a stylish summer outfit. Mi-young complimented him, saying he looked amazing that day, and suggested they head straight to the event, specifically to the Samjeon event auditorium. Later, in the car, So-young commented that she had spoken briefly with Seon-mi, and they were considering moving the Samjeon office to Gangnam. She explained that even though many people remembered the place because of the song Gangnam Style, Gangnam was one of the wealthiest districts in Seoul, and the song was inspired by that. So-young asked if it wouldn't be too expensive to maintain an office in a place like that, and Mi-young replied that despite being costly, it was manageable. In fact, Samjeon had grown so much that it had secured several exclusive celebrities, which greatly boosted the company's visibility, especially for being located in Gangnam, a strategic area for the entertainment industry. Even Seong-guk approved of the idea. At that moment, he was sleeping during the ride. So-young explained that he had been spending a lot of time with Minguk recently, which left him tired and sleepy. Mi-young asked if they were still stuck together like glue, and joked that they probably were at that level by now. When they arrived at the Samjeon event hall, Seong-guk woke up on his mother's back, entering the party. He wondered when he had gotten there and asked to be put down because he was embarrassed. Shortly after, the director of the new Samjeon department store appeared to welcome them. A waiting room was already prepared for everyone. So Young forgot to explain exactly what the event was about to her son. It was the grand opening of a new Samjeon department store. Seong-guk found it strange. He thought the place looked too old for a grand opening. The walls and ceilings were cracked everywhere. Then he asked his mother what the name of the store was. So-young answered that it was the beach store. At that moment, Seong-guk remembered exactly what had happened there one summer in his past life. One of the Samjeon department stores had collapsed, causing countless casualties, and the day of the accident was today. That was the store that was going to collapse. Seong-guk tried to remember the details. At the time of the accident, he had been away on a study trip sent by his father and only heard the news on the radio. He didn't remember everything clearly, but he knew that his mother must not get hurt. It couldn't happen again. Thinking of that, he told his mother they needed to leave immediately. At that moment, Vice President Jae-hyung appeared, asking if something was wrong. He said he hadn't seen Seong-guk in a while and wanted to know if something had happened. Seong-guk, desperate, said they needed to cancel the event, but Jae-young didn't seem to believe him. He wasn't the type to take a child's irrational words seriously. The event had been prepared for months and couldn't simply be canceled. Even so, Seong-guk remembered that the building they were in was the one that suffered the most damage in the collapse and caused the highest number of casualties. He insisted that they needed to move the event immediately. If he couldn't stop the collapse, he could at least save people. When Jae-hyung asked what he was talking about, Seong-guk replied that the event should be moved to Building B. He knew, based on his memory, that Building B was part of the department store complex but had suffered minimal damage. It was his only chance. So-young, confused, came over asking what was going on. She apologized to the vice president and explained that Seong-guk had been a bit stressed lately. Even so, Jae-hyung was thoughtful about his words. Suddenly, Secretary Yang appeared in a panic, saying there was a huge problem in the event hall. People began to be evacuated urgently. Chaos broke out at the scene. The secretary apologized and explained that the crowd had become uncontrollable. The entrance and exit of people were completely disorganized. Jae-hyung realized the situation was critical. He said the reason for all of it was obvious. The department head had probably tried to cover up the mistake and ended up creating all that chaos. Seong-guk knew that having so many people gathered there was extremely dangerous. No one knew exactly when the collapse would happen. They needed to act quickly. Jae-hyung then asked again what Seong-guk meant about moving everyone to Building B. The boy confirmed that was exactly it. They needed to transfer everyone there. Jae-hyung asked Secretary Yang if there was space in Building B, and he replied that yes, there was an open area not far from there. Jae-hyung gave the order for everyone to be relocated immediately. However, the store manager explained that the space was not ready yet. Some of the department store staff were already trying to maintain order, so it might be better to stick to the original plan. But Seong-guk insisted no. They had to leave urgently. He needed to save the people. He needed to save his own family. Jae-hyung finally understood and ordered Secretary Yang to move everyone to Building B immediately. The store manager tried to warn that the ventilation system in Building B wasn't working properly, but Jae-hyung replied that it was better for everyone to feel hot than to be trampled by the crowd. Seong-guk thought he had finally done it. Now everyone would be safe. He realized he needed to trigger the fire alarm so the evacuation would actually happen as planned, but he couldn't reach it. So-young then asked what he was trying to do. It was dangerous. Seong-guk wasn't supposed to do that, but he was sweating, nervous, and his heart was racing. He felt he had to trigger the alarm because people needed to evacuate immediately. The pressure was too much, and he ended up fainting right there. Vice President Jae-hyung rushed to him and asked what had happened. So-young, worried, said he had suddenly fainted and his body was very hot. Jae-hyung ordered that he be taken to the hospital immediately and said he would take him himself by car, since it would be faster that way. Even unconscious, Seong-guk couldn't stop thinking that he needed to save everyone. At the hospital, he was rushed to the emergency room. The nurse said his vitals were good, but he had a very high fever and small convulsions. Jae-hyung demanded to see the hospital director immediately, wanting quick answers about the boy's condition. Later, Seong-guk began to recover. He finally woke up in the hospital bed, with his mother sleeping on his legs. As soon as he opened his eyes, So-young was shocked and relieved. He woke up just as the morning news was being broadcast. On TV, it was reported that at 7 a.m. the previous Monday, a fifth survivor had been rescued from the Samjeon department store. Hundreds of victims had already been confirmed, and authorities promised to do everything possible to rescue those still alive. In other words, the disaster Seong-guk had tried to prevent really happened. So-young, emotional, said she was so happy he had woken up and asked if he had any idea how scared she had been. Seong-guk, confused, asked what was going on. Ji-seong explained that all of this was the support he had received from fans, as he had been unconscious for 3 straight days, and everyone had been very worried. Seong-guk was surprised to learn that he had been asleep for that long. Soon the doctor arrived with the test results. He said that actually they were excellent. Seong-guk was a very healthy child, but he had gone through an extreme episode of stress. He explained that it was physical and mental exhaustion, a real burnout, that caused the fever and symptoms. At that moment, Minguk clung to his brother and didn't want to let go. The doctor advised everyone to be more careful so that it wouldn't happen again. Myung said she was relieved he was okay, and Ji-seong asked that something like that never happen again, because everyone needed to stay healthy and united. Seong-guk, a little embarrassed, apologized for worrying everyone, but he still wanted to know what exactly had happened. So-young explained that there had been a major accident. The news was still talking about the collapse of the Beat department store, which had occurred on Monday. It was suspected that poor construction was to blame, and even the company's CEO could be involved. Seong-guk was deeply shaken. The disaster he had feared so much had truly happened, and he hadn't been able to stop it. He hadn't saved everyone. That left him feeling helpless and sad. So-young, trying to comfort him, said she didn't know exactly what he was feeling or thinking, but thanks to what he said that day, many people were able to evacuate before the collapse. Building B, which he had pointed out as safe, remained practically untouched. The vice president himself had said he was very grateful to the boy. Seong-guk thought with relief that at least Jae-hyung was okay. So-young said that she and Myung had also only been able to get out of that place thanks to him. She proudly said that she was very proud of her dear Seong-guk. He reflected that, even though he hadn't been able to save everyone or prevent the disaster, he had managed to change the future a little. At that moment, Myung called Secretary Yang directly to inform him that Seong-guk had woken up. Vice President Jae-hyung was the first to receive the news and asked about his condition. The secretary reported that the test results showed showed he was perfectly fine and healthy. Jae-hyung then ordered a statement to be published immediately, declaring that Samjeon would take full responsibility for what had happened and would do everything possible to support the survivors, especially Seong-guk. He also ordered gifts to be sent to the boy. Secretary Yang rushed to put everything into action. Jae-hyung reflected that Seong-guk was a very strange child, in a good way. That day, not only he and the secretary, but all the executives had been present at the event. If they hadn't listened to Seong-guk and moved everyone to another building, they could all have died. Samjeon would have suffered immeasurable losses. The vice president felt a strange connection with that child, as if he were his own son. His intelligence was absurd for someone only 5 years old. His actions couldn't be explained with words. That's why Jae-hyung decided he wanted to learn more about him, understand what kind of child he was, and discover whether there really was some kind of connection between them. Later, he went to his most trusted source for such matters, a fortune teller. He asked her to analyze Seong-guk's horoscope. He said the boy was a famous child actor. The fortune teller replied that she didn't watch TV, so she didn't know who he was. He explained that he just wanted to know if there was any compatibility between him and the boy, and also between the boy and the Samjeon Corporation. Jae-hyung remembered that this fortune teller had helped him and his family a lot in the past. She, in turn, said she owed a favor to his father, director Jeon Ju-shin, so she would do it out of respect for old times. She said it would be easy and began the reading. She said Seong-guk was a child who would devour him little by little until there was nothing left, that whether in this life or a past one, they were destined to meet. This bond was strong and would bring benefits to Jae-hyung as well. Right now, she explained, the boy was only a small puddle, but in the future, he would become an ocean capable of conquering the entire world. She said he would take everything from Samjeon and reach heights no human had ever seen. Jae-hyung, surprised, asked about his own son, Jeon Tae-guk. The fortune teller replied that there was nothing special about him. She said that if he had an older brother, he would be a bold child who would never live his own life. But since he was the firstborn, he would have a calm life without major changes. In fact, the fortune teller said that if there was a person destined to take everything from Jae-hyung, then he should stay away from that person. But apparently, he had no intention of staying away from Seong-guk. On the contrary, Jae-hyung confessed that he was curious to know exactly what that boy would take from him. He said he wanted to watch it all from the front row. The fortune teller then commented that he was not a simple man. She said he knew how to keep his enemies close, like great leaders usually do, and stated that he was born to be just that, a great leader, as he had already become. The fortune teller explained that he had only two options regarding that child: either help the boy as early as possible or crush him as early as possible. She also said that one day that boy would help him a lot. Jae-hyung replied that in fact it had already happened. It was that boy who saved him from the department store building accident, and more than that, it was Seong-guk who insisted that the search for survivors continue. He said with conviction that the boy had already done a lot for him. Soon after, Jae-hyung picked up his phone and called his father, director Jeon Ju-shin, saying there was something very important to discuss. Meanwhile, at Seong-guk's home, more survivors were being found among the rubble of the department store. Since the search had intensified, 13 people had already been rescued alive. So Young remembered what Seong-guk had said, that there were still survivors, and she felt relieved. Seong-guk thought that, in his past life, the search had ended too quickly. Not even 13 people had been saved. Finding that many now was undoubtedly a stroke of luck. So Young also remembered the moment when he insisted to the vice president not to stop the searches. At the time, she nearly fainted with embarrassment, thinking he was exaggerating, but in fact, he had been saving lives. Ji-seong said the whole family had gathered money to donate to the victims. They managed to collect 4 million won to help everyone who had been affected. Seong-guk thought that even after being discharged from the hospital, everyone was still too worried about him. He felt a bit flattered by all of it, but at the same time, he was disheartened because he believed he wouldn't be able to save anyone else. That's why he remained distant from the world for a while. But now wasn't the time for that. He thanked his parents for everything they were doing. Seong-guk said he wanted to go back to work. He not only needed to, he wanted to work. He knew something big was about to happen. During another shoot for Samjeon, Seonmi asked whether Seong-guk's exclusive contract would be renewed. The camera assistant announced that filming was about to begin, and Seonmi, without further questions, returned to her position. After the commercial was recorded, Seonmi returned to the dressing room and questioned Seong-guk about the contract. She said she had heard it wouldn't be renewed, and asked if Samjian didn't want to keep him. Seongguk replied that, in fact, it seemed like the right thing to do. He thought being a celebrity was never his real goal. Becoming a child actor was just a way to earn money during childhood. Now he wanted to build wealth, save, and look for other ways to invest so he could build his own path and create a great company. Seonmi admitted that since he had already thought this through, she would trust his decision, but commented that he was doing things that even adults struggled to do properly. It was clear that the fame and money from being Sanjeon's exclusive model were huge, but he was leaving all that behind for a greater purpose. She said she trusted his choices, but asked whether the people at Samjeon had approved of this decision. Seongguk confirmed they had. Then a staff member from the board informed them there was a visitor who wanted to speak with them. It was the vice director of SJ along with his bodyguards. Jae-hyung asked if Seongguk had anything planned for the day. The boy replied that he was free at the moment, so Jae-hyung asked if they could talk for a while. Later, Jae-hyung was carrying Seongguk in his arms out of the studio. The boy was a bit uncomfortable with that and said he could walk on his own. Jae-hyung, smiling, asked if he didn't like being carried by uncle. Seongguk, observing the man, thought he was acting very strange that day. He was looking at him in a suspicious way. Meanwhile, Seonmi was saying goodbye. She said it was nice seeing him again, even if briefly. Seongguk sensed a strange atmosphere between the two. Jae-hyung said he believed she would understand the situation. Seonmi replied that she had known from the start how this relationship would end. Since Jae-hyung was about to become the owner of Samjeon, it was important to leave everything settled to avoid rumors. Seongguk was deeply affected because in his past life, Seonmi had also disappeared from his father's life at exactly this moment in time. They had ended the relationship, and now he was seeing the same scene repeat. This time, he understood the reason. She did it so Jae-hyung could take over the presidency of Samjeon without complications, and apparently she did it without regrets. He thought he didn't know this side of Seonmi. Jae-hyung then asked if they could go. Seongguk wondered where that man wanted to take him. Later, he found himself in an extremely fancy place, as always, since everything about Samjeon was like that. It was a Chinese restaurant, his favorite. His parents were already waiting there. Jae-hyung invited them in, saying they were expected. Seongguk found it strange. He didn't understand why his parents had been invited too. The person who was waiting for them was none other than Jeonju Shin, the founder and current president of Samjeon. A banquet was later served. Jeonju Shin said everyone could eat freely without hesitation, since they must be hungry. However, Seongguk's parents were visibly tense and shy. Seongguk found it hard even to eat in front of the director of Samjeon and wondered what exactly was going on. Jeonju Shin was not only the current president of the company, he had also been his grandfather in his past life, a great man who had been born into a poor family and built Samjeon from nothing, creating his own kind of monarchy. Seongguk had a lot of respect for him, both in his previous life and this one. That's why he found it strange that such a powerful man was there with him out of nowhere. Jeonju Shin asked if the food wasn't good, since no one had touched it much. Ji-seong replied that it was delicious, but what mattered most was understanding the reason for that meeting. Jeonju Shin explained that Seongguk had saved his son's life and also Samjeon's reputation, and he simply wanted to express his gratitude. But there was more. He felt he needed to meet in person the child his son wanted to adopt. Ji-seong was confused, asking what that meant. Jeonju Shin then stated that he would like to become Seongguk's guardian. He planned to offer education and everything the boy needed to become an excellent adult, everything he could wish for. And if in the future he wanted to join Samjeon, a special position would be guaranteed. Ji-seong wanted to know why he was going that far. Jeonju Shin explained that Seongguk had saved his life, and he was simply repaying that debt. In fact, he also recognized the immense value the boy had. Seongguk was a child with enormous potential, and he was curious to see how far that boy could go. Jeonju Shin added that it seemed like his own son wanted to adopt Seongguk as his son too, and asked if, by any chance, Seongguk would like to become his grandson. Seongguk reflected and thought there didn't seem to be any hidden intentions. It appeared to be just a direct sponsorship. Even so, maybe there was something else he still didn't understand. Either way, there was no reason to refuse. He said that actually it was amazing, and that he would accept becoming his grandson. Jae-hyung replied that he wouldn't go easy on him. He would pressure him until he became a talent. Seongguk said he didn't mind. Ji-seong, upon hearing that, felt a bit nervous, but Jeonju Shin commented that he really liked the boy, and that since he was so smart, he wanted to train him personally. However, Seongguk interrupted, saying he had something to say. He stated that at his age, he shouldn't work so much, and also drank too much. He needed to rest. Seongguk remembered that, in his past life, his respected grandfather was a workaholic, and also addicted to alcohol. He lived like that until the end of his life, never slowing down. Seongguk said he needed to stay healthy. Jeonju Shin agreed, recognizing that health was the most important thing. He then began speaking directly with Ji-seong, and Jae-hyung became thoughtful. Maybe Seongguk was right. Lately, he had been feeling chest pains. At the next day's lunch, stage, Ji-seong presented his new dish, a famous item from the Jamsil branch, the original special bossum. Seong-guk thought that, to be honest, it wasn't that bad. Mi-young apologized for not being present at the store's opening, but Ji-seong replied that there was no need to worry so much. He knew that Seon-mi was very busy managing Samjeon. Seong-guk thought that over the past month his family had been extremely busy. First, his father finally opened the store he had always dreamed of. His mother also decided to help, getting hands-on. While the two of them focused on work, Seong-guk became responsible for taking care of his younger brother. At the same time, manager Mi-young remained involved with Samjeon's commitments since a star like him had temporarily stepped away from the media. It wasn't easy to fill the space he had left behind. Mi-young asked if he had been enjoying his childhood in recent days, now that he was taking a break from work and doing the things he had always wanted to do. Seong-guk replied that he had. Based on the money he had accumulated so far, he put together an investment portfolio and developed a strategy based on the IMF's future projections. So-young asked Mi-young for help, saying she needed to persuade Seong-guk because he was refusing to go to kindergarten. Mi-young said that things wouldn't work like that. As smart as he was, he couldn't simply skip a stage of school. Seong-guk thought he would never accept that. With his age and accumulated experience from another life, it made no sense to place him among 5- or 6-year-olds. It would be a complete waste of time. He stated that he didn't need to go to kindergarten and would study at home. But suddenly, Secretary Yang knocked on the door with a very serious expression on his face. Seong-guk wondered what had happened. Crying, the secretary revealed that he had come to deliver important news. He brought with him the obituary of Jeonju Shin, the director of Samjeon. Naturally, all attention turned to this event that day. Everyone attended the funeral, still in shock. Jeonju Shin had seemed so healthy, even at his age. Secretary Yang was very grateful for everyone's presence, especially considering how sudden the announcement had been. Ji-seong replied that of course they would make a point of being there. He had been very generous to Seong-guk and the entire family. The secretary informed them that the funeral hall was already crowded with people from political and business circles, which would make it difficult to bring Seong-guk there. Even so, Seong-guk was deeply shaken. After all, Jeonju Shin had been his grandfather in his past life, and once again he was gone. Seong-guk had even advised him to slow down and stop drinking, but it seemed it was all in vain. The secretary said he would take Seong-guk there quickly so he could pay his final respects, and then bring him back. So-young also offered her condolences. Seong-guk reflected on everything. Secretary Yang not only brought the news of his grandfather's death, but also informed him that the vice president was looking for him. Jae-hyung was deeply shaken. Now he carried a huge burden on his shoulders. He had become the new director of Samjeon. Seong-guk commented that he looked tired. Jae-hyung agreed, saying that it was extremely difficult to deal with everything. Nothing that was happening was trivial. Now he had the responsibility of keeping his father's legacy alive and passing it on intact to the next generations. He was the heir responsible for leading that massive corporation. Jae-hyung asked directly if Seong-guk would accept the sponsorship, but he replied that his parents would take care of that decision. Even so, Jae-hyung insisted, wanting to hear his opinion. Seong-guk replied that yes, he would accept. Jae-hyung was pleased and said that by the following month everything would be ready. Secretary Yang would prepare his transfer to Samjeon Kindergarten. Later there he was, finally beginning his journey to the top.